Welcome to the June 8th Complete Streets Commission meeting. This is a teleconference meeting with Complete Streets Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. I would like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and staff present. I'm Chair Sally Cole. Commissioners present include Katie Baruzzi, Jackie Sebrian, J.K. Jensen, Christopher Coleman, Lisbeth King. Brian Altman could not make it this evening. Staff present include Kevin Chen and Patrick Palmer. Patrick, would you please provide instructions to the Complete Streets Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chair Cole and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the June 8th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you for attending. At this time, we ask that the members of the commission please remain on screen for the duration of the meeting. You will control your own webcams and microphones. Staff will engage webcams and microphones to make presentations and respond to the members of the commission. For members of the public who are in attendance and you wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, please engage the raised hand feature. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment to the Complete Streets Commission. And also for members of the public who are calling in from a landline or a cell phone, you can press *9 to raise your virtual hand. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, well, under reports and announcements this evening, staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of this commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Kevin, do you have any reports and announcements?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do have two quick announcements. First and foremost, just wanted to let the commission know that the City Council has adopted a resolution to officially make the Complete Streets Commission a 7-member body. So we, as a result of that, we will no longer pursue to complete the 2 vacancies and will continue forward as a 7-member body. Second, the City Council also received an update on the Bayfront Area Pedestrian Circulation Plan. So as some of you might remember, this is the one that came to the Commission a few months ago, and we received some really good feedbacks about how we want to better the circulation of the Bayfront area, specifically revolving around Constitution, Constitution, Independence, and Chrysler, etc. So the City Council did receive an update on that plan, and we did not get any further additional feedback. So as a result of that, we'll continue to move forward, and anytime a development project or a funding opportunity that arises to make those improvements, we'll use that as the basis for any of those future improvements. So with that, I will conclude my update. Thank you.
Thank you. So with 7 of us reduced to size, each one is even more important. Awesome. Okay. Public comment in this part of the meeting. Under public comment, the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Patrick, do we have any public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It looks like we do have one public comment, and for anyone who might have joined, if you do have a public comment, just press the raise hand button or *9 if you're calling in. So it looks like we have Jean or John Baronis. You are now the public speaker.
I just unmuted. My name is Jean Baronis, and I am a property owner at 675 Sharon Park Drive. It's in a condo development named Lincoln Green. And I would like the commission to consider some kind of a study of stop signs. Yeah, I know that's a thrilling study, but I notice that people intend to stop, and it seems like they put their feet on the brakes, but more often than not, I noticed drivers not stopping in the Sharon Heights area. And I raised this with staff 1 month ago and received an interpretation of Caltrans regs that state that you cannot put a camera on a stop sign. So that there's that. I don't know why Caltrans thinks that way, and I would suggest the city could ask Caltrans for their interpretation. But if we cannot have cameras at stop signs, and I think they would pay for themselves with fines, because folks just drive on through. How about a street light at the intersection of Sharon Park Drive and Sharon Road? I don't know the criteria, the numerical criteria for paying for a intersection with a camera, but could somebody look at outlining a study? I don't know what data you need. I don't know how you gather data for that particular purpose, but the intersection I'm describing is a fairly major intersection in the Sharon Heights area. It's at the exit of a strip mall that contains a Safeway, CVS, a dental office, a dry cleaner, and 2 restaurants, a deli, a few things. And it's a 4-way. It's complex. So there's been some egress, shunt off, construction done to direct the traffic out onto Sharon Road in one direction, which adds to the complexity of that intersection. So I'm looking out here for pedestrians and drivers. I have witnessed accidents there, and I want to call it to your attention.
Thank you very much for your comment. We really appreciate your time, Jean. Kevin, anything there? Anything that you want to ask in clarification, or was that clear for you?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the public speaker and bringing that to our attention. Yeah, I was forwarded that email as well. It is something that's currently on our radar. So something that we'll need to do is conduct essentially what we call a signal warrant analysis. There are some data that need to be gathered. It does require some staff resources to look into that as well. So it is something on our radar, and we'll definitely get to it at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Jean. Appreciate your time. Patrick, any other public comment?
It does not look like it at this time.
All right. Well, then we'll move on to our regular business, where the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require the commission's approval. The first one will be to accept the Complete Streets Commission minutes for May 11th, 2022, our last meeting. Let's start by, before I take public comment, is there any clarification from the commission with regard to the minutes? Okay, I actually had some clarification that I will offer and see if others agree with my memory of the meeting. So when I was reading through the minutes for the agenda item E2, which was discussion of the Middle Avenue Complete Streets project, the minutes state, sorry, I'm looking at them right now. Explore multiple traffic calming measures at key locations, including University Drive, Arbor Road, San Mateo Drive, and Olive Drive. And then it says measures should include, but not be limited to raised crosswalk, flashing beacons, speed humps, traffic circle, speed feedback signs. I thought that members of the public were also asking for us to look at traffic calming measures at Blake, that intersection with Middle, but that wasn't listed in the minutes. And I went back and I just in my own notes, I did have members of the public asking us to look at Blake and wondered if that could be added to the minutes.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Chair Cole, for bringing that to our attention. So yeah, So I think we can definitely go ahead and add Blake Street to that list.
Okay, thank you. The second thing was, it says under the commission discussed and provided feedback to staff, one of the bullet points says, return both bike lane / parking removal options. Final recommendation should also consider green bike lane treatment, property lot size, driveway length, and distance to school. I thought that some folks raised distance to side streets. So for example, like if you're removing parking, how far away do you have to walk to park on a side street? I thought that was part of the discussion, but I didn't see that in the minutes. So when
Yes, I do recall that as well, actually. So I'll go ahead and add that to the revised minute as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Patrick, if we don't have any other comments from the commission members, do we have any public comment on this item, the approval of the minutes?
Just a quick reminder again, if you'd like to make a public comment, just raise that virtual hand or press *9. But it does not look like we have any new public comments.
Thank you, Patrick. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes? Jackie,
I'll move to approve the minutes as amended.
any seconds? Lisbeth, Commissioner King, seconds the motion.
Yes, second the motion.
Great, thank you very much. So we do have a second, a motion and a second on the table to approve the minutes with the recommended modifications. For those that would like to vote yes to the motion, if you can please raise your hand and just hold it up for a couple of seconds. I'm seeing unanimous votes. Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kevin, we are going to move on to item E2 on the agenda tonight, which is the review and recommendation of general plan circulation element and zoning map amendments to modify site access and circulation for the proposed Willow Village Master Plan project. I want to introduce Kyle Parada, who is the acting planning manager for the city of Menlo Park, to introduce this item. Welcome, Kyle. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and good evening, Chair Cole and members of the commission. Happy to be here tonight. Give me a second and I will get my presentation started for this item. Let's see. All right. Here we go. Okay. So for this project, this is the Willow Village Master Plan project. I'll give a brief staff presentation. The applicant is also here tonight and has the presentation of their own. And I'll just give a little bit of a background and overview to start. So first, the staff's recommended meeting format. So in terms of the agenda for tonight's meeting, what the city is looking for from the Complete Streets Commission is to allow for staff to provide an overview and presentation that's starting now with me here, then moving into an applicant presentation, taking public comment on the on-site and circulation and site access, and then also a discussion and recommendation from the Complete Streets Commission. So the recommendation that was in the staff report, and it's copied here for ease of reference, is to staff recommends that the Complete Streets Commission recommends approval of the applicant's requested new site access, and we'll get into that in a minute. That's at O'Brien Drive, and modified on-site circulation that are associated with general plan circulation element and zoning map amendments for the proposed project. And so I'll go into those a little bit through this presentation. They're discussed more in the staff report. A little bit of background just in terms of location. So the main project site is our focus this evening. That's identified here. It's the 60 plus or minus acre site that's on Willow Road between Ivy Drive, the SFPUC, San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, excuse me, right away, and the Dumbarton corridor, the Samtrans rail corridor, kind of between the Life Science Zoning District to the east and Willow Road to the west. And so for the planning division, we use Willow Road in a north-south orientation. So you'll hear me refer to things using compass directions a little bit more in relation to Willow being north-south and 101 here being more east-west, contrary to, I think, how transportation often goes about it. So I didn't change my analysis for the commission here. The Hamilton Avenue parcels are across Willow Road. There is associated work there related to a realignment of Hamilton Avenue to facilitate the on-site circulation and site access, but we'll focus on the main project site here. Just existing conditions for quick background in terms of saying the context here, the main project site outlined in the red dashed line, existing industrial site, approximately 1 million square feet of office, research and development, warehousing uses. And then to the west across Willow Road are the Hamilton Avenue parcels north and south. And so we'll refer to those here or there, but the main focus once again will be that main project site. So this is the proposed site plan. I'll give a few background details for the project and we'll move into the actual circulation. The proposed project is a mixed-use master plan. It does include an office campus that's 1.6 million square feet with a maximum of 1.25 million square feet for traditional office uses. The remainder being accessory uses such as the meeting and collaboration space. And so just to kind of orient the commission on this map, 10B is that meeting and collaboration space. The office campus is on the kind of right side of the site plan, if you will, on the north and east side of Main Street, which cuts through the site diagonally from Willow to O'Brien Drive, or would cut through the site diagonally. The residential mixed use is the balance of the project, kind of south and west of Main Street. There is a hotel identified here as number 7. Publicly accessible open space is aggregated in numbers 1, which is the town square between the office campus and the hotel. Number 3, which is the 3.5 acre publicly accessible park. Number 4, which is the dog park where Park Street meets or would meet Main Street. And then there's also an elevated park, item 6. And then item 12 identified on the map here on the eastern edge of the site, and the north is a mixed use, or excuse me, a multi-use path. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the circulation, but I wanted to set the table there. Other land uses, there's up to 1,730 dwelling units, up to 200,000 square feet of retail. That does include a grocery store proposed, entertainment uses, retail, personal services, and then the hotel is up to 193 rooms. So the 2 graphics here on the screen identified the general plan circulation. That's the current general plan on the left and the proposed master plan from the applicant on the right. One note on the current general plan, the Hamilton Court extension that's identified in the dashed yellow is actually, it's mislabeled here. Apologies for that. It actually should be where Adams Court would bisect the site. So more at that kind of bend in Hamilton Avenue, where it kind of does a 90-degree bend south. There are adopted zoning map and circulation element identifies a new realignment of Hamilton Avenue cutting all the way through the site to Adams Court. So creating that cross-site linkage from Hamilton and Willow to Adams Court and ultimately to University Avenue in East Palo Alto. So the dash lines otherwise are correct on the current general plan circulation map here. We did identify as part of the Connect Menlo general plan update new street circulation through the site. Those are the dashed orange lines. Those are identified as mixed use collectors. And so I'll get to that in a minute. The blue dash lines are new paseos through the site. So there's a paseo that would run the entire length of the eastern edge, and then 3 more throughout the site, 2 kind of mid-block paseos, and 1 southern access between O'Brien Drive and the new street connection to Willow Road. The applicant's proposed alignment, and they'll probably talk about this in a little bit more through their presentation, is on the right side. As you'll see, the site axis will be modified or would be modified for the if for this proposed project, it includes a diagonal new Hamilton Avenue / Main Street is how it's identified currently on the site plan that would link to O'Brien Drive, creating that east-west cross-site connection with a new site access at O'Brien. There still would be site access at Adams Court along the eastern edge with a loop road there. And then most of the main access through the site is pushed to Park Street south of the adopted zoning map. So similar alignment to that southern access shown in dashed orange on the left side site map would be connecting to Main Street and then to O'Brien Drive. So instead of the cross-site circulation or access being at Adams to Hamilton, it's pushed south to O'Brien in the proposed project. So that's one of the main zoning map amendments that are being requested in circulation element amendments, excuse me. The proposed site plan on the right does identify some of the multi-use pathways along Main Street, a portion of Park Street, and the eastern and northern edge of the site. So we'll get into that a little bit, but the applicant will touch on that in more detail. So moving on, as part of the staff's initial analysis, we did identify some potential street classifications within the project site. So the proposed site access and circulation, staff has preliminarily identified them as potentially mixed-use collectors, neighborhood collectors, a main street, and a local street. I won't read all of the details, but the table in the circulation element does include these in more detail. Table 1 of the general plan circulation element. However, just for a quick reference point, a main street would be a high intensity pedestrian oriented retail street. The mixed use collector is identified as a street that serves a significant destination. A neighborhood collector is a primarily residential street that serves a significant destination. And then local access or local streets are low volume residential streets serving mostly local traffic. So staff's initial analysis identifies that a number of the sites are in these 4 categories or could be in these 4 categories. Table 1 of the staff report provides staff's more detailed analysis and summary of each street classification. So I won't go into that in detail, but it is in the staff report for the commission's benefit. As we continue to work on the project, planning and transportation staff continue to evaluate the proposed circulation network. One of the main priorities with that evaluation is to ensure that the proposed site access and circulation prioritizes pedestrian and bicycle circulation and overall safety for bikes and peds. So once again, staff's recommendation tonight is for the Complete Streets Commission to review and recommend approval of the proposed site access and circulation. Staff's initial evaluation identified that the proposed project's access and circulation would be comparable to the adopted circulation element and zoning map. It will continue to be evaluated, as I mentioned previously, and refined throughout the project entitlement process, including evaluating the proposed street designs and classifications for bike and ped circulation. We're also looking for any additional guidance from the Complete Streets Commission tonight. Any additional recommendations for staff and the applicant to consider when evaluating proposed site access and circulation. And I think I actually skipped a slide. Yeah, sorry about that. Had a feeling we jumped a little too fast through that. So just for context, when we talk about bike and ped circulation, if I can just jump back before I gave my conclusions, this graphic here, which is also included in the staff report, identifies a little more broadly how the main project site interacts with some of the other bike ped infrastructure in the area. As you can see on this site map, the kind of diagonal cross sections of the site of Main Street and Hamilton Avenue includes a separated bike ped path that would link to a proposed tunnel under Willow Road that would link to the Bay Trail. The Bay Trail here is identified in green. Some other multi-use paths like the Levy pathway along the East Campus for Meta is identified in blue north of the Bay Trail. On the project site, it's a little tough to see here, but there are some blue identified multi-use paths there. That's the East Paseo and North Loop Paseo, providing bike and ped connections around the office campus if you're not inclined to go through the project site. and some other connectivity such as the elevated park, which does have a grade separated connection from the Hamilton Avenue parcel north to the project site as proposed by the applicant. So with that, I'll go back to this slide. Apologies for the out of order. But this, once again, what the city staff are looking for tonight is for the Complete Streets Commission's review and recommendation of approval of the on-site circulation and site access as it relates to the overall proposed project, including the circulation element amendment and the general or the zoning map amendment, as well as any other feedback on bike ped circulation or other circulation and site access more generally for staff to consider as part of the project review. And that concludes my staff presentation. The applicant is available and does have a presentation of their own. And so with that, I will stop sharing my screen.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Ashley with Hart Howerton. Hope you can hear me okay. We're the master planner of Willow Village and have been working with not just Kyle and the city's team, so a whole bunch of folks here in Menlo Park and over the last several years. Anyway, I think I want to thank Kyle and the team for, I think, very effectively summarizing everything with the staff report. And we wanted to just share a brief presentation, if nothing, just to give some context in case some of you haven't seen one of our road shows or planning commission hearings. And so I think it will give a little bit more color to the staff report, which is otherwise a bit more technical. Hoping you can see my screen now. I'm having to do this from a hotel, so apologies.
You can see it.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to start by saying, this has been a really interesting challenge to take what was an incredibly thoughtful effort by the city with Connect Menlo and combine that with, again, the sort of ideas and programs that come through a development concept or a project. And so this first image, just as I kind of get started here, is if you're standing at what's today the Jack in the Box, looking across the street into Willow Village. So this is Willow Road across the way. You sort of see the grocery store kind of front and center, and then Hamilton Avenue, which continues into the site, and we call it Main Street for lack of any imagination on street names yet. And even in the middle, you start to see a pedestrian refuge and some of the sort of pedestrian scale improvements. The first thing I wanted to show is Kyle went through, I think, a pretty good summary already, is the master plan. And it's a graphic that, we're all used to Google Earth, but it doesn't always sort of jump off the page in terms of what everything is. So the first thing, if just kind of moving from left to right, Hamilton Avenue today connects next to the Jack in the Box. And so as part of this project, it would be realigned down Willow Road, 60 or 70 feet. The shape of the chevron would be reconfigured. And that allows for sight lines and other improvements along with Caltrans to just make the connections here a little bit more easy. A second connection on Willow Road would happen at what we're calling Park Street. And again, you'll find we're not super imaginative with street names. So the street that comes next to the park, we've called Park Street. I'd say two big guiding principles of the project have been, can we create a very pedestrian oriented place, right? This is a neighborhood or an extension of a neighborhood that we're creating. And that feeds right into our second objective, is how do we really connect this new place to all the great stuff around our periphery. And so it's not about creating an island. It's about how do we invite neighbors in, invite the community in, invite folks who work and live here out. And so this all kind of blurs together, and Willow Road, which sometimes feels like a barrier today, feels more like a seam in the future. In just a little bit more orientation. So Park Street runs from Willow Road along the southern half of the property. Main Street, really the continuation of Hamilton Avenue, comes through the site, kind of hooks the right all the way down and connects at O'Brien. And so the idea here is that the east and west, the north and south are really kind of connected seamlessly. Two major open spaces, what we're calling Town Square. This number one here in the middle, more of a plaza hardscape, but really an inviting public space. And the park, a very generous passive recreation, playgrounds, lawns to sort of relax on. These become very important nodes in the project. There's a sort of a secondary open space, at least in scale, which is a dog park down here in number 4. And to be honest, like Complete Streets is part and parcel to what we're trying to achieve. This is a place where you live and work. It's an extension of the Bellhaven community. We want these places to be accessible and activated by the community, not just by the residents and folks who work here. In terms of sort of pedestrian promotion and sort of bike promotion in general, it's one thing to put a pattern of streets together. It's another thing to have buildings that reinforce how those streets behave. So these buildings, even though we can't necessarily have more intersections on Willow just because of Caltrans rules, we can break the building masses down so that the place feels more porous. It was a conscious decision to put the park along Willow Road as a way to break down the scale of any development that might happen here, but also to invite the community in a more obvious way. Another piece here is just along Main Street, the office campus. Again, a conscious decision. The short end of the buildings is oriented to Main Street, more corners, more breaks, more of an inviting place for the public to be. And so I think this is again just sort of like high level. How do we think about a place that's inviting and accommodating to pedestrians and cyclists? There are two other things that'll show up more clearly on the next graphic, which is the elevated park, which is this almost smile shape here, or watermelon rind shape here. And that is a very generous, it's almost like the High Line in New York, or above the transit center in San Francisco, structure that is bicycle and pedestrian friendly, that has a series of very generously scaled elevators that access it, so that if you don't wish to cross at grade on Willow, you can choose to come up and over and have that just other really cool way to circulate through the site. And it just, by the time you get over to the right-hand side here, very cool vista out to the wetlands. And then number 13 here, which is sort of hidden in the drawing, is a tunnel underneath Willow Road, kind of crosses at a bias under the rail corridor and under Willow Road, which is an unobstructed connection out to the Bay Trail. It serves a purpose of moving meta vehicles between campuses without clogging up the roads as much. And it's this incredible pedestrian and cyclist accommodation to connect, across the Dumbarton. So with that, let me just move forward one slide. This is a bit more diagrammatic. We've sort of ghosted out the buildings. You can see the office campus, the meeting and collaboration space, the hotel, and the mixed use residential buildings. Main Street is really a pedestrian retail street. It's lined with retail, starting from the grocery store and the sort of the ground floor uses of the hotel, the restaurants and so forth. Significant retail and restaurant opportunities. And so that Main Street is really a seam. And it wasn't, I think we couldn't do in some ways, a conventional Main Street, which is really just about cars being able to pull up close to a shop, because the culture of Meta is so connected to bicycles, those blue bikes that I'm sure you all see so often. There is no company that we've ever met that is so dependent on using a bike to get around to see other people. And so we wanted to make sure that that accommodation was here, and not only here, but done right and gets to the front door of office buildings and shops and so forth. And so that's here too. But what's been fun is just to understand how many folks cycle in Menlo Park and have a desire to cycle to this place, through this place to the Bay Trail. And so how important a bicycle facility like that could be. You can see here the North Loop Road. This is again a kind of publicly accessible road with this blue line. So it's a a bike facility around the outside. It's designated as a mixed use, multi-use path in our plan, and it's effectively a 12-foot wide track that can go around. Again, how to create ways that you can get through the site without necessarily crossing traffic or to minimize any kind of traffic connections. I think understandably, this plan looks a bit different from the Connect Menlo plan. I think we've always appreciated that, the Connect Menlo plan was trying to anticipate how what's really a one way in, one way out sort of suburban office park would get urbanized. And I think as we really thought about this place and how to create connections to the community and also how to balance the kind of competing interests of the Connect Menlo plan, it was, this Main Street is really the desire line, right? There's this vibrant community to our west. O'Brien is a major place of importance. How do we connect these two things? And then in addition to that, connect across to the Bay Trail. And that loop road really becomes a redundancy. It's like that choice you make. Do you want to ride down Main Street or do you want to sneak around the backside of Main Street? And I think we really wanted to make sure we had both in our plan. Transit is a big part of how Meta works for certain, but also how this part of Menlo Park works. So transit is a very present thing here. Actually, how do we think about these bike lanes and where are they maintained? Where are they, with classification? So, one thing of importance is the introduction of Class 4 bikeways into Willow Road. The introduction of this, it's really kind of a cycle track or multi-use path along Main Street. And again, this one on the loop road that I'll show you in a second. And it's kind of, again, part and parcel with a real transit objective here. Beyond things with wheels, bikes and buses and so forth, this has to be a place you want to walk. And so, of course, there's sidewalks on every street. And I think we've really made a point to try to not just build to the minimum, but actually build a streetscape. Buildings step back. You have the little plazas. You have these little moments in and around buildings so that these sidewalks are animated with places to relax, to enjoy yourself. And there's furnishing zones along the way. So that this really does become a vibrant place that you want to spend time on and not just sort of scurry through. It is, Kyle just showed this, so I don't really want to be redundant, but I think it is worth appreciating how improvements to O'Brien, the Main Street kind of biased connection that we've got here, and the value of the new tunnel connecting to the existing tunnel. What an awesome amenity that will be for folks coming up Willow Road on bicycles or on foot, or coming up our Main Street. Either they can do the Chilco route, they can take the new bridge route, or they can use this tunnel. So you start to get these loops, which are, as you know, so much more interesting when you're on a bike ride. Being a little more specific, so here's a shot on our Main Street, and this is just south of our town square. And so you can see this little red arrow up here, which indicates where in the plan we are. On our right-hand side, these ladies are sitting in one of the street side cafes that are in the foot of the office buildings. You see a generous sidewalk that's not just a sidewalk, it's a sidewalk and a furnishing zone. There's a separate furnishing zone that acts as a buffer to a 12-foot bikeway. There's a separate buffer before you get to the street. And so, on the one hand, you have these layers of kind of, I'll call them goodies, right? But furnishings, planting zones that help protect cyclists from pedestrians and pedestrians from cyclists and everybody from cars. And I think there's a sort of embedded safety in that, but also just appreciating that this is a place that's going to be attractive to a lot of different kinds of people. And those folks are going to come by foot some days, they're going to come on bikes some days, they're going to come by Uber one day and by bus another day. We want to make sure that this is a very democratic streetscape for all those folks. Dimensionally, and I know this is always a question on folks' mind, what does this really mean? So Main Street is an enhanced paving in general. It's a way of saying this is a special place, slow down. And that includes folks on bikes. We are trying to build in all of those measures to promote safety, whether that's a zone for doors to open, ample room for cyclists in two directions. Again, a zone for people to sort of look both ways before they cross. And then a streetscape that's really about promoting not just pedestrian activity, but lingering, whether that's cafes or hanging out and having a chat. And so dimensionally, we start to create those zones across the section of Main Street. Jumping down to the sort of southwest corner of the property, this is the park I mentioned. This is kind of a depiction of an older version of the park. So don't pay too much attention to what's happening in all the green space. But Willow Road in the foreground is one thing I wanted to highlight. So you can see the new bicycle facility that's been identified here. The intersection and the street that kind of runs opposite. This is our Park Street. And so we really see, it's one thing to build a bicycle facility. It's another to build a place, a destination on that bicycle line. And so this park, we really see kind of hand in hand with this bicycle facility. Like, here's a place to ride your bike and a great way to get here by bike. And I think that's been a constant theme in the project. Park Street in general is a major east-west corridor for the project. We're moving people in and out of the property. But I don't think we ever want to have a street that's all about one thing, right? We're not all about cars. We're not all about this or that. And so what we're trying to do is balance the width of sidewalks, the continuity of sidewalks from the park to Main Street, using a parking lane as effectively a buffer to the traffic on the south side of Park Street, which we know will be more heavily activated by pedestrians. But in each case, we're using planting strips and wide sidewalks, and then additional dimension on the private side to make for an enjoyable walking experience. A lot of these units have stoops and in front gardens. And it's again a way of how do you make this a more livable, inviting place? I mentioned earlier on about the elevated park. This is a view within the town square. In this case, you see this kind of depressed, really interesting plaza. There's retail. This is the hotel and the hotel lobby in the background. But what I wanted to point out here on the right-hand side of the screen is you sort of see the elevated park moving across. These very oversized glass elevators, which happen periodically across the elevated park. They're really designed for a couple of people hanging out together, bicycles under arm, getting in an elevator. So I'm sure we've all muscled our bikes into some elevator that was too small. This is meant to be the opposite, right? This is, hey, come on up, enjoy this really cool park that flies over the top and creates this, experience that doesn't exist in this part of the peninsula today. And lastly, and I'll just end here, I mentioned the loop road that runs along the east and the north side of the property. We don't all want to go down Main Street all the time. And so here's another way to get through the property. Here's again, a 12-foot facility punctuated by furnishing groups, enhanced through landscape. Let's create a place that is really inviting for anyone to come and go for a ride. We've waggled it, I guess is probably my technical word, so that should the landowner to the next door, want to connect in with another bicycle facility, hey, great, we're set up for that. And so these waggles happen to really kind of promote connectivity with adjacent uses. So with that, I'll wrap up. I mean, I'd love to field any questions. In addition to myself, I've got a couple of folks from the project team who probably are more technically savvy than me, but happy to talk about anything.
Thank you, Aran. Thanks for the presentation. That was really interesting. And good to see all the renderings. It really gave a good picture. Before we ask the commission for feedback and go to public comment, can I just ask the commissioner if there are any clarifying questions before I take public comment? Commissioner Brucey?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really curious about the lane widths on these roads. and it was really hard to see. My screen's not that big. The presentation's small. I'm wondering if you can like zoom in like 200% for my aging eyes on the slides that showed cross sections of park and sorry. Or maybe you can just tell me. I kind of am trying to understand the lane width.
Yes, we're mostly 13 feet.
Really,
And-
really.
Yeah, and to be honest, given the heights of the buildings in general and fire codes, I think that is that's a dimension is kind of most reasonable. And so I think especially, on Main Street, they're I'm gonna say they're generous, right? But they're sort of what you need to do for the kind of typical fire code.
Okay. I had another question. Is this Main Street? This one's Main Street?
Yes, this is the Main Street section. So you can see the sidewalk zone, the buffer, the bikeway, the buffer, and then the street.
So there's like a loading zone, not a parking lane, but a loading zone. And then
Yeah, it's
travelers.
effectively it will probably end up being a pretty sophisticated curb management strategy, right? So that when
Okay.
this is a busy place of arrival and departure, we can make it loading and unloading. On a Saturday, we might have short-term parking. And so that it can be very flexible. We've talked about Main Street, honestly, as a place you could close off for a big festival, basically, have a circus here or a farmer's market and then open it back up. So the idea is the very flexible.
Okay,
setting.
so final question on this one. I see there's a class 4 bike lane on one side. What's on the other side?
Sidewalk.
Great, but so what activities are going to be taking place on the side that doesn't have a bike lane, so it doesn't have bike access?
Retail also. So, restaurants, retail. If I go back to the plan briefly, I'll just say that there's the side with the bike lane you can see here on this.
Yeah,
the north and
yeah, that's
east.
helpful. Thanks.
Here on the other side, there's actually much more streetscape because the buildings are intentionally pulled back to create little plazas.
Okay. So if I'm riding my bike from Bellhaven across down Main Street and I want to go to a restaurant that's located in building 8, what's my move?
You'll occupy a lane. You'll either then
The loading
get
zone
into
lane?
the second track. No, this first leg of Main Street, you can occupy that. And then as you get into the project, you can get into the cycle track or you can dismount and there's bike parking throughout the zone here.
Okay.
I think if Commissioner Seaborn will have some patience with me, I had a related question to Commissioner Bruzzie's question about the width of the paths, because it appeared when you were showing the Main Street rendering, which you just showed again, where that was, sort of brilliant, where you had those furnishings in between the walkers and the bikers. And so it was very clear distinction. And yeah, there you go. Everyone had their space. I had the same question when you then showed us the park that borders Willow Road, the elevated park, and then the last slide around the paths that go along the perimeter. It seemed to me like bikes and peds were mixed. And I just wanted to get clarification if bikes and peds were more mixed on those paths, not so much like this where the furnishings break up the two bikes on one side, peds on the other. What are the widths there? Like, what are the widths of the paths that bikes and peds are sharing on the park that borders Willow, in the elevated park part, that path, and then on the path that goes along with perimeter?
Sure. So this is a 12-foot path on Main Street, as you pointed out, and it's got a buffer on either side.
Yeah.
I'll just skip back to this path is a 10-foot path. And yes, the intention was that they were shared, a multi-use pathway that's shared. And then it makes room for furniture zones or furnishing zones periodically. And then I might have to defer to one of my colleagues on the elevated park dimensions. That's not something I've been at the head of.
That's okay, but your 10-foot path was in reference to the park.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then does anyone else from the group know the widths of the path in the elevated park and also along the perimeter?
Oh, so, sorry, the perimeter is this 10-foot path, my
Oh,
fault.
the perimeter is the 10-foot path. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're just interested in knowing the width of the paths, the bikes and peds share in the park that borders Willow and also in the elevated park.
Yes, so along Willow, it's within the curb to curb dimension. It's a painted class 4.
I'm
bike.
sorry, I meant within the park. It looked to me within the park, those pathways that I know it's not the right rendering of the park, but I'm assuming you had mentioned people biking inside the park and I thought, okay. well, I
Oh,
see
so sorry. I meant they're biking. It's a destination for cyclists. There would be bicycle parking at the perimeter. I think we really did envision that the park itself was a pedestrian zone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know.
Okay, well, that's helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you. And then appreciate it. And then just for clarification around, if anyone has
Yeah, they just
Oh.
texted me. So the elevated park is 35 to 55 feet wide, and the paths within it that would accommodate cyclists are 10 feet wide.
and they share those with pets, right? Okay.
Yeah, there's really a kind of a braided path system. So I don't think I have it rendered. Yeah, you can
Fine.
sort of see it here where there's a more multi-use path and then a separate meandering pedestrian only path.
Oh, okay.
Right, there's Eric Morley with Signature Development. There is actually a dedicated bike path at the perimeter and then a bike ped and then a series of pedestrian paths that meander that are shown here.
Oh, okay. So all right then. So the blue is the dedicated bike and the meandering is the red-green pedestrian.
Is the green.
Yes, and the blue, can accommodate both bike and ped, but it has a dual purpose with green and blue.
Okay, okay. Sorry to interrupt, Katie. I hope that was helping get, sorry, Commissioner Seaborn, Commissioner Peruzzi, sorry, what you were getting at.
I think so. I wish we had been able to see this presentation ahead of time because the visuals are so much more useful, I think. And I would love to study it more. I'm sort of frustrated that I haven't had a chance to spend more time staring at the cross sections, but I appreciate it now.
That's a good point. Maybe we can keep that in mind for next time. If possible, we can have the visuals, not just the copy.
And Chair, just to clarify, the width of the elevated park ranges from about 50 to 75 feet wide. So, it's 30 feet above grade and about 35 to 75 feet wide.
Okay,
So very generous in terms of the, plazas, open space, walking paths, bike and pedestrian areas.
okay. Did you have a second point, Commissioner Peruzzi? I think you said two things, or?
I'm going to hold it for now and let other people ask questions.
Okay, Commissioner Seaborn?
Right now, I have one little question. In the report, it mentioned that much of Main Street would be private. And I'm not sure I couldn't quite find any clarifying information to explain like what portions of Main Street were private and what did that mean for all these public access areas.
So again, Eric Morley, Signature Development. Yeah, to clarify, good question. Those areas are privately, or not all, but some of them are privately maintained or privately owned and privately maintained, but all of them are fully accessible and deed restricted to the public. So the benefit to the city is that they're privately maintained, but they're all everything that you see is publicly accessible.
Thank you.
I do have one more question, sorry. In that Willow Road rendering where you showed the park and the bike lane on Willow Road, it looked like Willow Road was 6 lanes. And that's not my memory of what Willow Road looks like right now. Are you guys planning on, is widening Willow Road a thing that's about to happen? Or am I misremembering?
Good question.
So for Aaron, do you want to address that, or would you like me to?
If you could, Eric, that'd be great.
Yeah, there are varying locations where there are turning pockets. For example, we're creating a more porous site. So at Park, there are turning pockets and other locations where we are dedicating right of way in order to get a third lane, in order to create a turning pocket to get in at Park or elsewhere. And I don't know if there's a full dimension for in this slide deck, or potentially the professional staff in terms of showing the full dimension along the entire roadway, but it varies depending on which location or which section you're in on Willow, whether it kind of grows or shrinks.
Okay. Commissioner Seaborn, I think you already spoke.
Actually, I remembered after I did have one more question. I think was clarified, but I just have to ask it anyway because it seems crazy. It like
Yeah.
the tunnel, there are really going to be 2 tunnels over there? Like, because there's an existing multi-use tunnel that is used by vehicles and pedestrians and bikes. And I think what I hear you saying is that at number like 13, there's going to be another tunnel. Is that right?
Right, there's a tunnel under the highway today, just off the screen to the top. And so that would, if you think about being on a bike and riding under that tunnel, you'd be able to continue open air and then go through another tunnel into this site. So as opposed to sort of going under the highway, coming up and then crossing over the rail line or the rail corridor and then back down.
Yeah, as a bike or pedestrian, you never have to get on a public street in order to go to the Bay Trail.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Okay. Did that answer your question, Commissioner Seaborn? Okay. Commissioner King?
Thanks. I have 2 questions. The first question is, we saw a brief front elevation of the, I forgot your term for it, but it's your Highline elevated park. And I wonder if you can tell us if that is the same view all along the park in terms of the just kind of concrete see-through kind of look, or if there's actual existing buildings underneath. That was my first question.
I guess let's get to that illustration. That this is a picture of the elevated path.
Yes.
Okay, let's get to that.
This one here, is this one you're looking for?
Yes, that's exactly what. So will it look like that for the duration of the entire park, elevated park?
Yeah, so Aaron, maybe I can address that. So yeah, it's actually not concrete. It's actually kind of the opposite of that. It's intended to be kind of an elegant, in this view, it's more difficult to see, but it's an elegant look and feel that is designed to be both functional, but also very attractive. And that paneling underneath. So yeah, if you read that as concrete, it's not. It's clad.
Really, my concern was that whether it's open or not. And I like this open look of it and wondering if that's going to.
Oh, yeah. No,
That's really
along
what
the
I'm after.
entire, along the entire edge, it's open. That's the intent. The intent is to have vistas, to have views into the town square, out to the Baylands, and have it be very visually porous, and accessible.
So it's an unobstructed view from this side to the other side on the ground level.
Correct. Correct.
Okay,
With the exception of just, drought tolerant landscaping, climate responsive landscaping that will be planted throughout those zones.
great. It's lovely. My second question is what number 4? What's the size of that ball field?
It's not a ball field.
Okay.
It's,
fine.
get back to, this is probably the best illustration of it. It's about a tennis court and a half in size, so it's actually a sloping lawn. So there's kind of a mound here that sort of slopes down.
That's
and
the
it's
one
just
on Willow. I guess I'm talking about number 4. Isn't that a field?
Number 4.
The park that's at the base right there.
That's
Oh,
a dog park.
Dog park,
So
okay.
yeah, it's actually it's a dog park that's sort of split in two, big dogs and little dogs.
Okay, okay.
But yeah,
My misunderstanding.
there'll be balls
Hope-
there.
Was hoping it was a ball field.
Any more clarifying questions from commissioners? No, I just had one. Maybe the last one from the commission before we go to public comment. The overhead view where you clearly see the Main Street cut through. Can you switch to that one for me for a moment? It's just like a bright line right through. I think it's blue line. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. I'm just curious, my clarifying question was, if you're in the park, because it feels like you position the park to be sort of a magnet, right? As you said, to blur the lines and pull the community in. If you're in the park and you're hanging around and there's an event, or for some reason you want to go to Town Square and you're on your bike, maybe I missed it, but if you're just biking down that street, West Street, kind of what's that biking experience there? Like, are you in a separate lane? What's kind of that situation in those streets?
I think you're biking in the middle of the lane, and it's a very low traffic, slow street. It's West Street, Center Street, East Street. These are very residential streets, and so I think we've got generous sidewalks and streetscapes. And
Okay, there's sidewalks there too.
Yeah.
Okay, and bike lanes.
Not bike lanes.
Oh, okay.
Not dedicated bike lanes. We
Okay.
expect that you'll ride in lane.
Okay. All right. Oh, I see. All right. Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to public comment. Yes, sorry.
Sorry, one more question. I know this is all kind of hypothetical, but I remember there was a discussion about some of the housing being senior housing. Do you know where that's located on this map?
Yes. Let me go back, and Eric, maybe you want to describe it.
Sure. Yeah, so if you see the first number 9 that's being highlighted, we have 308 affordable units in the project, of which 120 are dedicated senior affordable housing units that will be at even lower income levels, very low, extremely low. So they're located in the first number 9 where the cursor is here, and obviously providing both senior housing, but also services that are important to that constituency and that client as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. If no more comments or questions from the commissioners, Patrick, do we have any public comment on these items?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It looks like we have one public comment so far. If you do have a public comment, just raise your virtual hand or you can press *9. But Dina Levin, you are now the public speaker.
Good evening, commissioners and staff and development team people. My name is Adina Levin. I am a Menlo Park resident. And first of all, I want to commend the project for having through circulation for people using all modes of travel, including the access from East Palo Alto, which is something that residents had wanted in terms of being able to access the amenities, and also the work that's going on Willow Road to be able to improve the pedestrian and bicycle access so that people can not only use the site, walking and biking inside the site, but be able to get to it from other places. With that, I have a number of questions and comments. One is about the 4-lane roads where the collector streets seem to be designed with 4 lanes. So I was listening to the presentation. I was walking around a neighborhood on Santa Cruz where there had been a really robust discussion about going from that old school 4-lane design to do a road diet with a turn lane in the middle. And that's been a pattern over the last 10, 15 or more years to go from those 4 lanes to the road diet. And so I have questions and concerns about that design for these multi-use streets. Also, in terms of the 13-foot standard width, that seems pretty large for something that is not intended to be for trucks. And once again, when you have lanes that are wide, that encourages people driving to speed, and so it express questions and concerns about that. In terms of the one question I have is, how would people get to Dumbarton buses? There's going to be the MTC is doing a bus on the shoulder, which means that maybe some of the buses that come up Willow will continue out on 84. So how would people taking that bus get there? I think the stoops are nifty, but I'm also wondering in terms of the access to how many of the homes will be accessible to people who have wheelchairs. I think commissioners may ask questions about some of the ways that people on bikes and pedestrians coexist on the streets, and I think that the commission will ask those questions. And the last question I have that some commissioners may be interested in asking about is the amount of car parking per person in the development for the different uses, since that will affect the amount of driving that people will do versus utilizing transit and other options. So those are my comments, with the intention of having someplace that people can use in all modes, but when people drive, they will drive slowly and carefully and easily coexist with people using active transportation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adina. Thank you for your comments. Patrick, do we have any other public comment?
I'd like to give it a second longer, but it
Yes.
does not look like it.
All right.
Anyone else? You can raise your virtual hand, but I think that's it.
Kevin, may I get some guidance? Do we have the presenters respond to the public comment, or do we move on to the commission feedback and have them respond to all of it together?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Oops. Sorry, my apologies. The camera was off. Yeah, so definitely at this moment in time, I welcome any comments or further questions that any commissioners might have. So, and then of course, at the end of the day, if the chair is willing to basically direct those questions to the applicant or to city staff from Mr. Levin, in addition to comments that you might have, certainly happy to field those as well.
All right, then. So we'll move on to any feedback on the presentation of the recommendations from commissioners.
I have another question actually before I give feedback. I'm curious about, I'm sure it's in the EIR. What's the predicted average daily traffic for these roads that you're planning? Do you have a sense of that? I'm just trying to understand how these streets would compare to existing streets in Menlo Park from a usage standpoint.
I'll start. Kyle Barada, acting planning manager. So we did obviously have the environmental impact report. It did look at trips to and from the site as well as on-site circulation. I don't have the numbers offhand. We can certainly follow up with that. That's definitely some data that are available, but I don't have it right now as it relates to giving detailed answers. I'll certainly look for it during the discussion tonight, but it is an item we can definitely follow up on.
Thanks, that would be helpful.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Katie, did you have your hand raised? Yes.
I can kick it off if
Yes,
other
please
people
do.
want to think about it. And I'm going to try to
I'm
be
sorry, can I ask a favor though? Excuse me for the interruption. Can we put up a plan slide? Is that all right with you, Commissioner Bruzy? If we, yeah, because I think as a visual, it helps people to understand the context of the questions and comments. Thank you, Commissioner Bruzy.
Okay, so I want to echo what former Commissioner and Chair Adina Levin said. I was thinking during the presentation about where else in our city we have 4-lane roads and what those roads feel like. And I didn't think of very many. I think I thought of Chilco, Sand Hill Road, El Camino, Willow running through Bellhaven, a couple of other places, Middlefield. And those streets are not pedestrian or bike friendly. Even the ones that have bike facilities on them, they don't feel comfortable to cross. They tend to be barriers in our community. And they tend to have really high volumes of traffic. And that's not surprising because we know that traffic is like gas, it expands to fill the space that's given it. And so to me, this does not look like a bike ped friendly environment. It looks like an environment where we're like doubling the number of 4-lane streets we have in our city, and putting things on the periphery. I was going back and looking at the Caltrans guidelines, for example, for bike facilities and where they would recommend class 3 bike facilities. And they don't recommend class 3 bike facilities on high traffic roads where there are 4 lanes. They recommend them on neighborhood streets like what we'd see in Allied Arts, low traffic roads with mostly like residential type usages. So I appreciate, all of the sort of workarounds and things, but when I think about how people bike for transportation, it feels really important to me. First of all, especially if you're going to have seniors and people like that living here and kids riding through maybe on their way to middle school in East Palo Alto. I really think designated bike facilities are important, but I also think that you want your bike facility to take you from the place you're leaving to the place you're going. And so that's why I was asking the question about if I'm coming down Hamilton Street and I want to ride my bike somewhere on Main Street doesn't happen to be on the side of Main Street where the bike road, the bike trail is, what's my option? It doesn't feel as inviting. And I'm concerned about the width of the road for crossing and for speed reasons. The width of all of these roads, actually. I feel like I've said that. I'm feeling like a broken record, but like, to me, it feels like a step backwards. And, when I think about the average daily traffic that we have on some of these roads, it's like 20,000 cars a day on places like sections of Middlefield, and certainly El Camino is like 36,000, I think. If that's the level of traffic that we're expecting here, then we should be having a lot of conversations about how to manage that. We should be looking at things like parking. We should be looking at transit. That Samtrans corridor that's right now completely unoccupied by anything that had been discussed as a revitalization idea for Dumbarton Rail. I don't think we have plans for that, but I think that's, a big piece of a puzzle for a neighborhood where you're adding 1,700 residences and untold, millions of feet of office space. So I would like to see this be truly bike and ped oriented and more transit oriented and less car oriented. And I'll stop talking now. Thanks.
Commissioner Coleman?
Hi, yeah, thanks for sharing the screen. To touch on the previous commissioner's question about parking, what type of parking are we looking at on this whole complex of buildings? And like how many available spaces will there be? Do you know?
Acting Planning Manager Parada, if you want to address that, you can. I will just say for the commission, as you probably know, Meta has one of the most aggressive TDM programs in the country.
Sorry, what does that stand for?
Oh, I'm sorry, Transportation Demand Management Programs in the country. More than 50% of their employees arrive to campus not in a single occupant vehicle. And so for office and residential and retail, we have extremely low parking standards. We have just over 3,000 parking spaces for office for the 6,000 workers plus that will be there. So a very aggressive TDM program that will continue, both the residential and the senior. We are near the minimum. The retail, obviously, we need to ensure that the retail is successful from a market perspective. So we want to make sure that the retail parking is appropriate to ensure that they're successful. But I hope that gives you a little bit of flavor in terms of the parking.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, do you anticipate parking to be integrated with the streets or underground?
Yeah, you know what? Oh,
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, exactly. Great question. What you notice in virtually every image is that you see very few cars and very little parking. And the reason is 95 to 97% of all of the parking in this entire plan is hidden in structure, underground, or in building. And so when we talk about having this plan and parking and cars being subsidiary to pedestrians and bikes, they are within buildings, they are underground, under the town square and elsewhere, and in structures. So yeah, that's where they are. We've located those very intentionally and very proactively.
Thank you, Eric. And, to add to that as well, with parking and innovation to electric vehicles, will there be, this may be kind of too early to ask, but will there be electric charging stations integrated with those parking sites?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's not too early, and great question. Yeah, absolutely. So the plan includes all electric buildings meeting your REACH codes. And included in that is photovoltaic, all electric, and electric car charging at each of the components. So office, retail, residential. So that's incorporated in the plan.
Yeah, because I think that most of the buildings on the 10A side, like 10A, 12, 11, will be solar powered. Is that true?
Yeah, we have as you see, that what you're seeing on the roofs of virtually every building is photovoltaic, that gray kind of look and feel. So yeah, those will be photovoltaic. So I don't have before me tonight the exact, offset from solar to grid, but highly sustainable, LEED Gold, all electric, electric vehicle charging are all incorporated into the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner King.
Thank you. Can you point out where the Meta bus route would be?
let me just, so each of these parking structures in number 11, sorry, let me turn on my camera, have transit hubs at the bottom that accommodate the
All right,
meta
excuse-
buses.
Who is speaking? Oh, Aaron, you're speaking.
Sorry, Aaron
Okay.
Ashley,
Thank you. Thank you.
can't jockey my everything here. So
No,
each
no,
of these,
sorry.
each of these parking structures, number 11, which are the parking for the office, have basically transit hubs at the base of the ground floor of them. And so
Oh, I see.
So we
Park-
wouldn't expect there, that it's really just on the perimeter of the development, not down the main street or the Park Street or any of the areas where you've got the bike ped path.
Park Street, which is the only 4-lane street in the project, has, we expect that some bus traffic will come from Willow Road
Okay.
to Park Street and into the lower garage. Otherwise, bus traffic comes from either University or O'Brien and utilizes the East Loop Road into the 2 parking or the 2 transit hubs. And then there, I'm sure you've seen kind of the cute little European shuttles that move around the Meta campus. Those would, because they're quite small, circulate through the tunnel, around the site, up Main Street and back through the tunnel. So that kind of small scale convenient transit within the Meta campus would utilize Main Street, but not the big buses.
Thank you.
I want to make sure that we clarify a couple of points that have been raised. Commissioner Abruzzi said that she's concerned about 4-lane roads, and you just mentioned that Park Street was the only, is that true, the only 4-lane road within the development? And then if you can confirm that, and then also the Willow Road, is that, how many lanes is that? Is that 6?
Willow Road continues to be a 4-lane street, but as
Okay.
Eric Morley mentioned previously, to accommodate Caltrans standards, we're introducing turn pockets to get better traffic flow. So
Okay.
it's a little hard to see here, but there are 2-lane left turn pockets introduced onto Willow to help get traffic or cars off of Willow and to their destination quicker.
Okay. Another point that was raised, I just want to make sure, Adina's point around, I think she asked a very specific question about how would people get to Dumbarton buses? Could someone address that? I'm afraid I don't know much about that, but I know she asked it.
Through the chair, if I may jump in to clarify one more point on the previous
Yeah.
question.
Yes.
So the applicant explained Park Street 4 lanes. There is a portion of Main Street currently proposed as 4 lanes, the first block between Willow and West as you enter
Oh, I
and
see.
make turns down west or up west to the hotel for that first block as it relates. And I think part of that is with the 2 turns in, you need 2 lanes to enter the site, you know, in terms of queuing. Those entrances, and I'm not the transportation expert, but I do want to just, as it relates to Willow Road, with some of the queuing analysis that was done for those double turn lane pockets, and that's part of what the applicant is talking about with regard to access to the site. There's 2 lanes needed, so you don't end up with queuing of vehicles spilling back into other traffic issues in terms of getting vehicles into those lanes to make the left turns. And I should probably stop there before I go into too much out of my realm of expertise, but that is how you see 2 turn lanes into the site at Willow and Park and Willow and Hamilton/Main. And then those, at least on Main, the first block being 2 lanes there to accommodate the vehicles, whereas Park is proposed right now as 4 lanes, the entire length of it.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. I had some comments, but I just wanted to ask commissioners again, anything else before, any other feedback before I ask my, yes, Commissioner Abruzzi.
Sorry, I was going back to the staff report and it said East Loop Road was 4 lanes too. Am I wrong about this?
East Loop.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
I saw 4 vehicle travel lanes.
That's where the buses will be.
Yeah. So that seems like another 4-lane road, right?
You are correct. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to mislead you. I
No,
think
it's okay, it's okay.
East Loop Road, and again, it's sort of Park and East Loop Road become the primary shuttle accommodations, the
Mhm.
commuter buses. And so we did want to give them a space for turning motions and to make sure that they're not obstructed so they get in and out of the site a little bit easier.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry about circulation.
Mhm.
If I'm coming off Dumbarton Bridge in my private vehicle and I'm lucky enough to be occupying one of the 3,000 employee parking spots, where am I turning in? Am I turning in at where's my major access point from Willow Road? Or there's no way to get there beyond, I guess you could take University and come in the back. What are you anticipating people will do?
It's a great question, and I'll say you mentioned traffic counts earlier.
Yeah.
You know, we've really been working at kind of peak times, because this is not, you can imagine, this is not a place that's super heavily trafficked all day and evening, right? It's a morning and an evening. So we do think that Adams and O'Brien are excellent ways to get into the parking. We think Park is as well. To be honest, Main Street to North Loop Road is certainly there as an accommodation, but I think with the number of things there, we've really tried to discourage that from as a primary circulation route. Hopefully Waze cooperates with how it sends people through this place. But I think so primarily it's O'Brien, Adams, and Park Street. The Main Street's really not, I don't think, an efficient way to get to a parking structure if that's your goal to get to work in the morning.
And is Caltrans requiring these extra turn lanes because of level of service? I thought that CEQA analysis now no longer required level of service to be mitigated.
Yeah, while Eric Morley Signature Development, while they don't necessarily look at level of service, they do look at operational issues, and they still have a set of guidelines. So the objective is to meet their requirements in order to maintain that roadway, which is under their control, not under Menlo Park. So we are working with with that state agency to make sure that we accommodate their requirements.
So finally, another question. Sorry, I keep dominating, but I have so many questions. This is a really big shift in our cityscape, so I think we should be thoughtful about it. Have you considered, we didn't talk at all actually much about the routes that we're anticipating people might be accessing various features here from Bellhaven. But I know that, a lot of the amenities proposed in this are, mitigations that are designed in part, at least for people who live in Bellhaven. And so we should be thoughtful about, if you're a Bellhaven resident, how are you going to get to the grocery store? How are you going to get to the dog park, et cetera? And I know that there's a sort of a frustrating scenario with the water right of way that from Ivy, but I'm wondering, it looks like you're doing some enhanced crosswalks, but what other things are you considering? And for example, have you thought about working with Caltrans to do no right on red or leading pedestrian signals or anything like that to make it more comfortable to cross this incredibly wide street? Because we don't actually think people are going to go all the way up to the raised park, right? I mean, Newbridge and Ivy, and those are streets that are going to generate people heading in this direction as well. I wonder if you could just speak a little bit about that.
Sure. Commissioner Abruzzi, a great question. And I think you hit a very important point, which is, at Ivy, the SFPUC controls and Caltrans controls all of that intersection. And so our goal with the elevated park and with the area around the Willow Hamilton retail was to control or be able to work with areas and property that we control. And so, you're right, that's a very difficult location. And so that's something that we're happy to explore and look at both at Park and at Ivy to see, are there ways to do enhanced crosswalks, enhanced paving? Happy to explore that. And that was identified, as well. But the goal here obviously has been to, work within the areas that we control and then, collaborate with others in the areas that we don't control.
Okay.
Through the chair, if I might, real quick, I apologize. Just want to Commissioner Baruzzi's point, is Assistant Public Works Director Hugh Louch. So we have a variety of other things going on Willow Road, and among those include potential pedestrian crossing enhancement, not just in this location, but kind of across the corridor. And I don't think we need to necessarily think about just this project as we think about enhancing pedestrian crossings in general in the corridor. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. We are actually pursuing things like leading pedestrian intervals and enhanced crosswalks, which we hope to see on the ground actually soon, and other things like that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And from the applicant perspective, we're committed to working with the city and Caltrans. We share the same goal with the Complete Streets Commission in terms of that crossing. So just wanted to share that with the commission.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Hugh. Commissioner King?
Thank you. Can you point out and speak to handicap access and accommodation, especially as it relates to the senior facility and the streets around there?
So, Aaron, you can address this. I'll hit it and then you can amplify. I would just say that, obviously the entire project, including the senior housing, will meet all, ADA requirements. So, that's part and parcel. That's part of the project. I would also say, that in terms of the stoop, facing, interface on these, traditional residential streets, very critically important in terms of having eyes on the street, creating this very dynamic and neighborhood friendly environment. So, in each of these buildings will be accommodating. I apologize. We have 3 dogs that just barked at the same time. So we will be meeting all ADA requirements in all buildings, but also wanting to ensure that we've got these wonderful stoop conditions that create this neighborhood feel. And Aaron, you can, amplify that. You've been, designing this very, kind of artfully and in a detailed way to kind of curate a very soft streetscape.
I'll just say that as a matter of practice, residential buildings like this are all accessible. So these ground floor units may have stoops, but there's an elevator or ramp provision within the building. And so the stoop is a convenience or a secondary means of egress to again, activate the street, not as the sole access point. I think in addition on the senior building, there's a shuttle pickup that's been provided for. So I think, again, we're anticipating this user group and their mobility challenges. Again, the whole site is accessible. The one thing that I'll point out that you may have seen in another view is that the site's actually being lifted several feet to get up and out of sea level rise. And so the first block of Main Street and Park Street is actually going uphill a bit, but I think it's only at a couple %. So it's well within the accessibility requirements.
Thank you, Aaron.
Commissioner King, are you done with your question? Can I move on to the next?
I am.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sebrian.
Thank you. So first, I just want to thank my fellow commissioners for all your thoughtful questions. I really, I'm so impressed by the level of detail that you're noticing. And as a resident of the Belhaven neighborhood, I thoroughly appreciate your all your comments. And then I also really appreciate from the project, like your stated intent to make bike and pedestrian infrastructure be strong and and the most welcoming part of that community, I think is great. I'd kind of forgotten about the buses, and once they came up, now I'm curious, what is the primary route? Like, what is the bus circulation plan on this? Like, where are they coming in and where are they going out in the grand plan?
Through the chair, staff does have the shuttle and bus and tram plans from the master plan set that we can share and have the applicant talk through to have a visual. So I can share my screen if you just give me a second.
Thank you.
So I'll turn it over to the applicant team, but this is the shuttle route plan. And I think there was also some interest in the smaller intercampus tram route. So that was talked about earlier. So here are the two visuals. So I'll drive if Eric or Aaron want to speak to the on-site circulation.
Yeah, if you can have the slide up, I think Aaron can address those, but as you can see from the images, they're really, identified and isolated those to the, perimeter and easy kind of access points out and away from the core. Aaron, do you want to elaborate?
No, I think you see that the rectangles that are shown in the two parking structures are effectively, very designed transit hubs. This sort of sawtooth or other configuration to make it easy. And again, yes, Park Street figures into this, and that's a big reason why it has the 4 lanes. But primarily, we're trying to keep that shuttle traffic at the perimeter.
Sorry, what was the slide before though, with the red line that went right down Main Street?
Yeah, this is an inter-campus tram.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned.
There are those much smaller little European buses. And so it is
Mhm.
effectively one of the ways to keep folks moving between Meta campus buildings without
Yes,
plugging up the roads.
intercampus shuttle. Before we move on from this slide for a second, Commissioner Seabrian, did you have anything else with regard to this question around the bike? Excuse me, Jess.
I don't think so. Not right now. Thanks. So.
Yeah. So I did have a question though. When you were talking about Main Street earlier, I think Eric, you said, or maybe it was Aaron, like, well, we hope that Waze doesn't ask people to go up Main Street, that ends up being a pass through. And my thought there was, I don't know this neighborhood as well as some of the other commissioners, but when you look at that map, is that something that someone would be inclined to do if they're down by O'Brien? And would that be like, oh, great, I can just cut across here, to get up to where Hamilton or Main Street, whatever, hit Willow? Is that something that you have any concerns around in terms of that pass-through traffic?
Yeah, I would say, the way that the slow streets have been designed, it's extremely inconvenient. We want cars to feel very uncomfortable when they're on, these core Main Street and these core streets. So, it's intentionally circuitous for a car, but Aaron can talk to that as well. So we don't see that as an issue or concern. And I think we've kind of structured the framework of the transportation network to not have that be a concern, but Eric would, or Aaron would defer to you.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I get in trouble for using the word friction, but a street like Main Street is intended to have friction. We would never say this is a jaywalking street, but you kind of hope it's the kind of street that gets used that way, so it discourages a lot of cut-through car traffic to the benefit of pedestrians and cyclists. Loop Road, at least North Loop Road as well. So I think the traffic modeling we've done, which is extensive, is to try to understand how this place will behave so that it's not a parking lot, right? I mean, that cars can get through this so that a human can experience it and enjoy it. But I think, we've all experienced how app-based technology can manipulate road systems. So that's why we've done other things, paving and so forth, to make it to really discourage that from happening.
I'm sorry that I don't know this from the map, but or maybe you said it, but are there any stop signs on that road or any of these roads? Like once you get within this campus perimeter, are there stop?
Yes. There are lots of frequent stop signs.
Okay, good. That I was just curious. I don't know if we talked about that.
Oh no, every time there's an intersection, we're giving the pedestrian the best shot at crossing.
Okay. Commissioner Abruzzi.
Yeah, I'm curious about, so speaking of friction, what's the speed that you're designing each of these roads to be? So if you're thinking about, this is the speed that I actually want drivers to go, what does that look like on each of these roads that we're talking about? Or is there sort of a community-wide desired speed limit that you're designing toward?
Well, it's easy to say we'd love it to be 19. I think 25 is what they actually let us post. But there's nothing above that.
So what are the design features on these wider roads that you're going to use to make drivers go 25?
Well, so Main Street, as an example, and the other neighborhood streets are 13-foot lanes, 26-foot corridor, because that's the CAL FIRE requirement. The Park Street, which is a 4-lane road, is in the other conditions where we have 4-lane road, the lanes drop to 10 or 11 feet.
Okay.
We have frequent stop signs throughout the community, and then Main Street also has paving changes, and those enhanced paving are intended to slow people down.
Had you thought about doing, instead of the 4 lanes, 2 travel lanes and a turn lane, which is what we've been seeing other streets in our community convert to, like Santa Cruz? And I think that's the plan for a section of County Road up by Alameda.
Yeah, we're getting at the limits of my traffic knowledge. Effectively, you don't start saying, let's add a 4-lane road. You get to it to satisfy congestion at peak times. And so those 4-lane roads are really a function of how do we design for commute hours.
Right, which is so backwards. No offense, but that's, that's the way we've been doing things since the 50s that gets us into the trouble that we have with all of the with safety issues. And it's a self-perpetuating problem where you have these really wide roads that don't have a ton of traffic for most of the time. It's like we're designing for 2 hours a day, and then the rest of the time it looks like, I don't know, a speedway, a go-kart track. There's nothing keeping people from going quite fast indeed. And when I look at the location over by the dog park of the affordable housing and the senior citizens, and I think about what it might mean to them to have to cross the loop or the park road with all of the shuttles and the width of it, I'm very uncomfortable. I just, from a human-centered design perspective, that doesn't feel. There's so many aspects of this where your attention to detail has been so phenomenal. But that particular part to me feels, again, like we're using the rules from 20 years ago. And you're so forward thinking in so many other ways. I wish there were space to use the latest thinking around these traffic circulation. That's all.
Just to add to that, I mean, I work at Apple. I understand all the challenges about getting people in and out. And I also understand a large employee population where a lot of people commute by shuttle. But I'm wondering if to Commissioner Abruzzi's point, if there was any other consideration or any other options considered with regard to those two 4-lane roads. Clearly, the one east loop seems quite out of the way from anything else except the commute travel, shuttle traffic, excuse me. But I think it's the other one, Park Street. It seems to be giving her pause and maybe myself as well. Just curious about whether there was any thought, you're right, Erin, I don't have a traffic expertise myself, but just any thought to like, maybe it's 4 lanes some times of day and not other times of day, or was there anything else really considered so that to keep it feeling safe for all the different uses that you're trying to accommodate?
Okay, Erin, let me just start. Again, you can highlight, I think, and it may not show up on the smaller plan, but Park Street is punctuated by multiple stop signs, 2 parks, crosswalks. So the idea is that there's not this through traffic that just moves through that site. So the idea is to slow and interrupt and generous landscaping in order to do that. But Erin, you can talk to that as well.
Can someone flip up the map again? I'm a visual person, apologies, but I think we all might be nice to keep that as a point of reference. We can think of it, picture it in use. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, and just to amplify that, right? So you come in off of Willow Road, we've got an intersection with a stop sign. We've got an intersection with the stop sign. We've got, places of significant pedestrian refuge in these parks. We've got turning movements into a parking structure under this parcel and a parking lane that accesses garages on these 2 lower parcels. So I think there are a lot of things that will inhibit anybody getting to speed at just the pure dimensions of a few hundred feet. It's not a drag strip. So I think in just practically, right, there's these rubs between and I'd almost forgotten about these conversations from a couple of years ago between sort of design perfection and operational efficiency. How do you, it's one thing to make a lane behave certain ways at certain times of the day. It's another thing to enforce that and not impoverish users, folks with disabilities, other things. And so I think these things are always a balance, and a project this big and this complex is about 2 trillion negotiations. And so I applaud all the comments and compliments, and just know that this is really hard to do.
It is really hard, and it's clear when you look at it that, it's not just, if it were just an office, site, if it were just a corporate office park, that would be one thing. And I appreciate that you're trying to make it something else, uses and for enjoyment and enrichment for a lot of other types of populations. So appreciate that. And also beautification for sure. I think one of the questions I would have about Park Street, because we've had quite a few questions, conversations as a commission recently around crosswalks and enhanced crosswalks and the benefit of those when you've got a lot of people walking and biking, is maybe that's something for consideration with Park Street. I don't know if Commissioner Abruzzi, you think that would make a difference or sort of address some of your concerns there. But, obviously we've got some major crosswalks right there with the park and everything else. And maybe that's something that you've already considered or we could discuss. Whether it's like a beacon or a flashing light or et cetera, et cetera. No.
Through the chair, maybe I can take an opportunity quickly to kind of check in on the purpose of the meeting tonight, because that's a really great question, first off, and a really great topic for the applicant and the city to continue to look into. And I'll definitely look to the applicant to respond at this point to that question. What I do want to do is just make sure, as part of the planning division's request and staff's broader request tonight, we are hearing a lot of feedback on the design, bike ped, and a lot of great feedback that we can definitely take at the staff level and review and work with the applicant to see how we can incorporate going forward on the entitlements. As I mentioned in the presentation, staff is continuing to evaluate the details of the project plans and components, especially around bike and ped circulation. So we really appreciate all the feedback. I do want to just make sure to touch back to the purpose and the request to make sure that as part of the overall discussion, we can definitely continue the discussion. And I'm not trying to move away from the feedback and the question and answer right now, but want to make sure that in closing at some point, staff would like a vote by the Complete Streets Commission on the recommendation for approval of the site circulation. And that is intended to be specific to the changes geographically within the project site, not all the details. So certainly if the commission recommends approval tonight per staff's recommendation of the realignment or relocation, if you will, of the public rights of ways through the site, the dedicated rights of ways, and the paseos, will still continue to work through all those details on the overall design and how the paseos and how the bike and ped connections, specifically the on-street and right-of-way bike ped connections, work throughout the overall site. And the comments on lane width, the comments on number of lanes on any of the public rights of ways or private rights of ways throughout the site, all great feedback that we'll consider regardless or as part of the recommendation. Just want to make it clear what we're looking for. And once again, staff really appreciates the discussion. So with that, turn it over to Aaron to maybe answer the question more specifically on anything they have specifically looked at, but we hear you, and we'll continue to look at bike ped crossings and creative ways to help enhance that.
We can defer the question. That's a specific question, and it sounds like there'll be more conversation around that in the future. Kyle, that was my next thing I was going to say to you is what exactly, what are the guardrails? What exactly do you need our approval of for the purpose of tonight, which I think you've just clarified. The only thing I'd like to say, and I'm new as chair, so I'm not exactly sure if this is something that's typically asked, but if we, for example, as a commission, vote to approve the new circulation plan that's been presented and the modifications from the original one, how can we have assurances that we will be further involved in the discussion around some of the ways in which bikes and peds will coexist, or some of the concerns around that some have raised around the 4-lane roads and how we make sure that there's traffic calming measures on those roads? Is that something that can almost be like a condition of approving this, or can we make sure that we have that back on the agenda so that we will be further involved?
So that's a great question. Let's see. So in terms of the immediate next steps, the process for the review includes this meeting with the Complete Streets to recommend on the circulation amendments, modifications, mainly to the location, as I said. Following this meeting, staff, there are still lots of work to be done on the overall project. So I don't have a schedule for next meetings, but the next steps would be that the Planning Commission would review the overall project and recommend to the council on the project entitlements, including the environmental analysis, the environmental impact report, but also specifically as it relates to items like circulation, the conditional development permit, the master plan. So the meeting tonight is really intended to be the opportunity for the Complete Streets to provide input. I think we hear from the staff perspective, we hear the input. We'll continue to work on the details of the design of the on-site circulation. There certainly will be opportunities for more public review at the Planning Commission and Council, but not necessarily another Complete Streets Commission meeting.
Chair Cole, if I may, just to sort of support what Kyle was saying and being maybe perhaps a little bit more direct. Yeah, I don't think, and it's sort of, this is through the planning division, right? There isn't space in the schedule to come back to Complete Streets with another detailed review of the circulation. And as he said, I think they're looking for the high level, are the sort of general circulation patterns appropriate? But I think you can give us direction as staff, and I think you have. So it could, be formally, but I think we've gotten it very clearly, and I think probably the applicant has heard it also very clearly, a desire for a real careful look at the specific design. This is a very high level look, right? And it responds, as the applicant has indicated, to, you know, how do you get all of these new people moving through this site? But then these have to be translated into, like, this is where the stripes go on the ground and all that kind of thing. And they're doing that work now, I believe. But that is something where we have an opportunity, I think, as staff, to sit down with the applicant and have heard the direction, I think, from across the commissioners that you'd like us to do that, and like us to make sure that, you know, in the kind of cross section of every roadway and at every intersection, we're thinking about you know, how we best sort of support the movement of bicyclists and pedestrians. And that's something that we can sit down as staff and make a priority of. So we can take that as direction, or you can make a motion and have a sort of formal direction. But I think it was pretty clear from our
I think we should make a motion. I think there's enough people on this commission, as far as my observation, that we don't want to leave this meeting without specific points being made and recorded that that we've expressed concern around, wish we could have another meeting on, but have come up consistently. I mean, obviously it's an ambitious project, but when you do something ambitious, you do it with care. And we want to see, I wish we could have another meeting where we could really be able to review what you'll produce and what you know solutions you'll come up with in response to the time we've invested and the thought we've put into expressing it to you. Commissioner Abruzzi?
Yeah, okay, so a lot of what we spend our time doing as a commission is trying to come up with ways to mitigate the bad design choices that were made in our city in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. So coming up with places to put blinky crosswalks and raised crosswalks and wider buffered bike lanes. And it's like, that's 99% of what we do. We so rarely get an opportunity to start from scratch. I mean, we never get new roads. And so it's acutely painful to me, and I'm not exaggerating, to watch us design the same kind of roads that we will later have to mitigate and already start talking about those mitigations, like a raised crosswalk and another blinky, sign. And I mean, I can make a motion about this. I don't know if it'll get any support, but my plea is, can we not? Can we do it better this time? Can we, because I don't think we should have to, in this day and age, design roads for peak congestion in a residential mixed use community where we're hoping that people will bring their dogs and their kids and their balls and seniors. And there's only one street in our entire city that's a 4-lane street where we have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit that's enforceable right now. And nobody goes 25 miles an hour there anyway. It just doesn't happen.
What street is that?
That's up where the senior Menlo Commons. That's not even, I can't remember if it's even technically Menlo Park. I think it might be county, where it's really close to where Elizabeth lives. But Elizabeth can probably say, like, do people really go 25 there? No. It's really, and we have horrible bike problems there because there's a shared lane for bikes and there've been some pretty severe accidents.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I would make a motion, a bold one actually, and maybe nobody will second it, that I'm fine with the idea of rerouting the Main Street, what was it called? Hamilton to Main. That seems cool. The shuttle looks great, all that. But the single biggest problem that I can see with this project as designed right now is the width of these major streets, which is going to require, it's going to diminish the bike ped connectivity that you're trying to seek, and it's going to require further mitigations down the road. And I would make a motion requesting that that the developer work with city staff, and come up with a more 21st century road model that, yes, still adheres to, whatever we can work out with the fire district and Caltrans, but that is not something that we're going to have to worry about later. Like, can we not, can we not add 4-lane roads to our city when everywhere else in our city, we're trying to mitigate the impacts of 4-lane roads? I don't know if I can make it as a motion. I'm not good at making motions.
Well, Commissioner Bruzy, what is your motion? Okay.
The motion is that I would love to see the developer working with our staff to come up with a more streamlined road profile than the 4-lane roads that we're seeing at, especially like Park and the Loop Road. And certainly not have 4-lane roads that are supposed to be shared with bikes. Is there anybody who's interested in that as well, or is it just me? So does anybody want to second that? Did staff understand what I'm saying? Is there anybody on staff who can? Kevin, you?
So perhaps I can start and then defer to the transportation team. So let me see if I can put it in planner terms first, and then I'll look to Kevin and Hugh to kind of help here to kind of clarify. But I think what I was gathering from the planning side is that the recommendation would be to approve the general plan circulation element and zoning map amendments with the recommendation or request that staff and the applicant continue to work through the overall site circulation as it relates to prioritizing bikes and peds and looking at specific, this is where I was starting to lose it, but and consider the reduction in travel lanes on like Park Street and Main Street in terms of the number of lanes. That's kind of what I was gathering from the recommendation. Is that
I think that's
close?
a pretty good summary, Commissioner Bruzy.
Yeah, I mean, I would use probably stronger language. Like it kind of sounded like yay everything, but maybe think about kind of trying to maybe narrow the roads, and I would be much more, I would lead with, you know, if I were on city council, I wouldn't vote to approve this project with the circulation right now with the width of the roads. And I know that there are people on city council that might agree with me. And so, you know, if we could head that off at the pass and narrow the roads, that would be a great thing. And I think otherwise there are many great features in this project.
Sorry, Kyle and Hugh, is it completely off the table that this commission not see any sort of option B or sort of refinement of the bike ped on Park Street? Is it Park Street? Is the main street? Is it Park Street and East Loop? Let's just focus and see if we can.
I think those are the two that are consistently 4-lane roads. And so they're 4 lanes without turning lanes with wide, at least 2 of the vehicular through lanes are wide. They're 13 feet wide. And they do not have, neither has bike lanes on them, although they both have bike facilities sort of off the road. And to me, that feels like we're recreating some really bad design that we have elsewhere in our city. And I'd like to see if staff and the developer can work together to come up with a better design for those streets.
I mean, maybe I don't want to simplify, but is this about, can we see a plan with bike lanes on those roads?
If I may,
Yeah.
Chair Cole, so, and Commissioner Bruzy, I think what we can do, I think what we're talking about is not like just the way these schedules work, you know, doing another presentation like this might be difficult, but we can definitely bring back, you know, and come back to you as staff and say, here's the sort of the conversations we've had, here's an informational item. We can do that as we do with many things to the commission. And we'll certainly also keep you in the loop, because all of this will then go to the next stage, as Kyle's mentioned. So it goes to the planning commission and then eventually the city council. So you certainly all have opportunities to participate in the process throughout, and we can definitely report back to you at subsequent meetings about the kind of status of those conversations as as they're ongoing, but
Yeah.
maybe not this size, just for the sake
Understood.
of other items, not this size.
Understood. I think that, this commission can also, because of the specific nature of the conversation tonight, can also go to the planning commission and the city council and say, we expressed these concerns. We were then shown refined plans or revised plans, and we don't think they hit the mark.
Yeah, obviously, each of you as individuals are welcome to participate in those meetings and provide your feedback.
Yeah.
What happens if, I guess what I'm hearing is these are the plans that we get to approve or not approve. This is our shot at voting on something. And I don't think I can vote for them. I don't think I can vote for a hypothetical. Maybe we'll talk about narrowing things. I think the signal I want to send tonight is as a traffic safety advocate, for me, this is really uncomfortable.
Okay.
So I'm gonna, unless I can hear from staff and developer that there is actually an intent to revisit the road width, like both number of lanes and the overall width of the hardscape that somebody has to cross, or I don't think I can vote for the plan as lovely as many of the aspects of it are.
Okay. So that's your statement, Commissioner Brizzi. Okay. All right then. So I think you're withdrawing your motion. If I'm understanding.
I think so, because I'm not sure there's a point. I think what they're looking for is approval of the plan as presented tonight. Am I wrong about that?
Just.
If I may, Chair Cole, yeah, and thanks, Commissioner. And I think actually, Kyle, I might ask you to maybe speak a little bit to kind of the specifics of the action being requested. Again, a significant part of it is that if you, there was one slide, I think in Kyle's presentation that shows the, when there was nothing here, the set of streets and paseos that we drew, thinking like, this is what it might look like. And then the applicant has kind of come back and said, no, we want the circulation will be somewhat different than that. And that high level circulation, in as much as, sort of a big thing that you're potentially saying, yes, we think that can move forward, is that sort of broader change in the circulation pattern. So instead of, Maine or Hamilton going straight and then down and then across, it comes down at an angle and some of those other kinds of changes. I'm describing it rather crudely and I apologize for that. But if you remember that sort of side-by-side diagram, I think that's an important part of it. But I want to maybe let Kyle speak to the specific, what you are specifically approving, so that's well understood.
Well, I just want to interrupt for a moment because I think we've learned something tonight, which is that this commission wants to weigh in on bike ped. And if you're coming to us to approve like overall circulation, but we kind of sort of can't have, I don't know, any jurisdiction over bike ped, it's just frustrating. To us, it's an essential part of the plan, and it's frustrating to sort of say, please approve high level, but when you've put all this time in to ask questions about bike ped and have found some things that could be improved, we don't have any ability to affect any change or review it. We just be going on faith that you're going to come back to us, and then we get to see, or take our comments seriously. Okay, Kyle, I think that Hugh asked you something. I interrupted. I apologize. Just a little frustrated.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I think Hugh did a very good job of explaining the request tonight, and I want to take a step back even further, and let me actually share that slide from the presentations. I do think that's helpful, but I think taking a step back even further, the request is for the commission to make a motion and an action on a recommendation. So I do want to just clarify the general plan circulation element amendment, that is a legislative action that requires council action. So the role here is a recommendation to the advisory body of the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council. So this is one step in the process, and certainly, staff will continue to evaluate the project. Ultimately, we'll forward the Complete Streets Commission's recommendation on the circulation element and zoning map amendments. They go hand in hand here because the zoning map was part of implementing of the circulation element to the Planning Commission, and ultimately that will be shared to the council as well. So there, like Hugh said, there's many other public meetings, many other opportunities for commissioners as individuals to provide comments and feedback in those public forums. And once again, the charge of the Complete Streets Commission in this instance, so first off, totally understand the predicament about bike ped and the improvements there, but the charge here is about the amendments to the maps that the city adopted as part of Connect Menlo, being the circulation element, overall circulation for the city site circulation figure 2 of the circulation element, and the zoning map. So that really should be the crux of the motion. We certainly, to go back to a comment that was made, I think there was a lot of benefit for city staff to hear the commission's deliberation, discussion, feedback, and for the applicant to hear it as well. I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I will say from the planning staff side, I found that very helpful and insightful to the overall project to get into the details of bike ped circulation at this level. I felt that was very helpful, and we can definitely take that and consider it and work with the applicant. I know that is going on faith, as you said, but that is something that I still find was helpful, regardless of the motion that the commission may or may not make. But we did hear the feedback. I want to just stress that.
Thank you, Kyle. Before a motion is made, I just want to ask 2 questions. One is, which is the body, the city body, that will hear the bike ped plan in detail and evaluate it? Is that the City Council?
So as part of the overall project entitlement process, the master plan does include some of the high level elements for the bicycle and pedestrian circulation and ultimately the improvement plans. I don't want to get into the weeds, but the engineering plans will identify those in all the detail being fleshed out. Those are kind of going hand in hand. So certainly the council will see as part of the master plan, the high level bike ped circulation and vehicle circulation as well, and the details in the subdivision mapping improvement process. So they'll see that as part of the overall project entitlements, the council will.
Okay, thank you. My second question was, appreciate, Kyle, that you felt the staff gained from our observations and questions around the bike ped aspects of the project. But Hugh, earlier you said, can you repeat what you said, your commitment to the commission around that the staff will talk to the applicant, in some detail, or will follow up with them around some of the things that were expressed?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chair. I think Kyle and I are saying the same things, maybe with just slightly different words, which is that we all heard you loud and clear. And just to be clear, the circulation element is all circulation. It's multimodal in nature. So it's, do we have circulation for all types of users, bike ped, automobile, and so forth. So, and again, but at this kind of high level, and then the design details still have to be finalized. And I think we heard a lot, as Kyle was just saying, from you all about what those design details are. Clearly the applicant has heard as well. We can, the city has sort of regular meetings with the applicant as we work through the whole process, obviously not just this part, but all the things they have to do, which are legion, I would say, and a lot of work for Kyle. So but as part of that, we can include this as a sort of a key discussion item, I think, going forward to make sure that we're getting at some of the very clear feedback that we've heard from you all. And then just if I may make one other point, which I think the applicant made earlier, but which, we have to work through. Some of the implications are because Willow Road is not a city facility, and because some of the implications for what happened on Willow Road do sort of transfer over onto the design of the streets on the site, that there are some constraints that we have to work with there. I just want to make sure that was clear to you all. And that doesn't mean we can't try to find ways to be creative and thoughtful and take all the feedback and I think and hope that we will do everything we can to do that, but we have to sort of balance out the fact that, so if, maybe the shorthand way to say this, if Caltrans tells us thou shalt have 2 left-hand turn lanes, then we have to have 2 receiving lanes, because you can't send 2 lanes into 1 lane, and then you can narrow them down from there, but things like that we'll have to kind of work through and deal with.
Through the chair, if I may, can I follow up on that Caltrans issue with Commissioner Lodge for a sec, or with Public Works Director Lodge for a sec? I know that it's been discussed at various points and that various council members have actually requested that we talk about what it would take to acquire the segment of Willow Road from Caltrans, because it's been such a hurdle. And I mean, I feel like I think I heard Councilmember Taylor asking about that within the last month. And I'm curious whether that's anything that staff are talking about, and whether that's something that should be considered given the scale of this project.
So yeah, thank you for that question, Commissioner Bruzzi. So relinquishment of Willow Road, it's actually it's one of the policies in the circulation element of the general plan that we pursue that at some point. It's, as staff, it's something that we would need direction from council to do. It is not a short or simple process. So timing wise, I think we're looking at years, not months or weeks on that. So I think for this project in particular, that's not something that we could just do. It's also quite complicated because Willow Road itself, the portions that are not directly in Caltrans control and always will be, because the interaction with US 101, that portion never gets relinquished. The only portion they would relinquish is from roughly New Bridge to Bayfront. And if they were to relinquish that, part of that is in East Palo Alto. So we'd also have to have concurrence from East Palo Alto. Presumably it's unlikely, I would suspect, and we haven't even begun to have that conversation. But I would think it'd be unlikely that they would say, sure, Menlo Park, you can have all but this little stretch that's in East Palo Alto. So that adds a little bit of extra potential complexity that also would probably make it challenging to achieve in a shorter time frame.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Bruzzi?
Yeah, it's frustrating though, because when we did connect Menlo, I mean, probably one of the reasons that policy was in there is because this scale of project was anticipated, and we wanted to be able to have more control over the mitigations, et cetera. And it's unfortunate that we're not able to, it seems like Connect Menlo is going to be 90% built out before we're ever able to get to that policy. So anyway, good to know how that works though. Thanks.
All right, then. So Hugh and Kyle, to clarify, the staff is recommending that we approve the amendments. That's the recommendation that's in the agenda for tonight.
Yes, through the chair, that is staff's recommendation. The amendments relating specifically here to location of new street connections and paseos within the project site. The main project site, I should clarify, as I mentioned, there's the offsite improvements as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Sebran, did you have your hand up?
Briefly. Yeah, I sort of, gosh, it's such an interesting discussion. So if I bring myself back to looking at the shift in sort of site circulation what I can bring myself to say is like, I could support a motion, like, I don't mind making one, that says that we approve of the shift in how they're circulating inside this project. Because as I look at these two sort of circulating elements, I don't see that the new one is like, my hunch is there's just as many 4-lane roads in the existing project site circulation as there are going to be in this new project site circulation. So, and I can see that the way it's configured, like, there is a lot of attention to the bike ped thing. I 100% agree with what Katie's saying in terms of like designing fewer roads that are meant to accommodate a lot of traffic, which then just turns into fast traffic when there's not a lot of traffic. And Middlefield is a super great example of that. So the short part of it is, I could make a motion to approve the shift in site circulation, but I don't know how to make sure that we convey really strongly that there are some parts of this that we don't really like. It's just that I think those parts exist in both project site circulations. And so I may as well operate from this new one and try to make change that way. So that is how I'm rationalizing making a motion to approve it.
Okay, thank you. That was very clear. Does any other commissioner want to second the motion?
I do.
Commissioner King seconds Commissioner Sebrian's motion. Kevin, do you want to take a roll call?
Great, yeah, thank you very much. So we do have a motion and a second on the table. So if the commissioners that would like to vote affirmative to this motion, if you can raise your hand and just hold it up for a couple of seconds for me.
Kevin, I'm going to abstain from this one because of my component with Meta.
Okay, great. Okay, sounds good. And then Commissioner Abruzzi, I presuming that you're voting. Got it. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right, we look forward to getting a report back on the discussion. Hugh and Kyle, thank you for your time. We know that was a long discussion, but I hope you can see how important it is to us as individuals on the commission and residents of Menlo Park. All right. I think if that's completed, we'll move on to the selection of vice chair. Do the folks from Meta and associated groups want to drop off the call? I don't know how that works, but okay, we'll just keep going. All right, so selection of vice chair. Kevin, would you like to introduce this item?
Great, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So in the interest of time, I will just go ahead and maybe ask for any nomination for the selection of a vice chair. Commissioner Abruzzi.
I nominate Commissioner Sebrian.
Okay, great. And just before I take a second, I just want to make sure Commissioner Sebrian is okay with the nomination.
I am, thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. So if I can have a second, that would be tremendous.
I will say, Commissioner King.
Commissioner King will be the second. Great. So in that case, we have a nomination by Commissioner Abruzzi and then a second by Commissioner King. If for those that would like to vote yes, you can please raise your hand and hold it up for a few seconds. I'm seeing unanimous votes. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Fantastic. I'm so sorry. I forgot to ask for public comment on that item. Is that right, Kevin?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, perhaps we can just go ahead and maybe go wait for, oh, there's Patrick.
It does not look like we have public comment for anyone who might have joined. Just raise your virtual hand and I will get around to you. I do not think we have a public comment.
All right, then. We, for E4, item E4, oh, congratulations, Commissioner Seabrand. I'm sorry, let's have a. Yay. Thank you for committing to the vice chair position and for your time and dedication to the commission. Thank you very much. Okay, so E4 is to evaluate commission subcommittees to support city council priorities. Kevin, do you want to introduce this? Oh, you might be muted.
Yes, sorry, I apologize. Yeah, so if you can give me just a few seconds, I prepared a few slides that I want to introduce to the commission here as well. So
okay, then. Thank
apologies for making it wait even longer, given the time.
So sorry, keep going. I have to let my dog out, sorry.
My apologies, my computer is not cooperating at this moment. Awesome. If Chair, if you don't mind just confirming that you can see my screen, is a presentation.
I can, thank you. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So yeah, so I thought we'd take this opportunity to share with the commission, given that we have a new commissioner, Commissioner Coleman. I want to take this opportunity to introduce the work plan that we have, and then as well as taking this opportunity to transition into some of the subcommittee structures that we have, and then of course at the end of the day, open to any recommendations, restructuring, etc. that, or even nomination. Like for example, if Commissioner Coleman wants to join a certain commission, or if other commissioners want to peel off, those are certainly open for discussion and ultimately a motion, if you will. So just to kind of, I have approximately, I think 45 slides. So I try to go over them as quickly as possible. The first one just really just talking about the mission statement for the commission. Obviously, being an advisory body, we want to advise the city council realizing some of the goals that the city have set. So for example, complete streets, Vision Zero, climate action plans, and obviously a very fruitful conversation was just had with the Willow Village. So certainly emphasis on the complete streets, I think, is slowly but being realized. The next few slides are just basically a reminder for the commission about the goals and priorities for our commission. So as I mentioned before, we are an advisory body to the commission, to the city council, which means each commission, we have a yearly work plan that we prepare generally around June, May or June time or so. And the goal is that for each year we identified some actionable items that we want to do in support of the city council. So generally what that means is each year the city council would develop their own priorities and work plans. And based on that work plan, each commission under the city umbrella would then work on their work plan in support of that city council's work plan. So as I'm going through the next few slides, you might notice that some of the verbiage are quite broad because of the fact that we're trying to make sure that we hit all the elements that supports the city council goals for each year. There are also some specific actionable items, either recommended by the city council or perhaps recommended by the commission as a whole to further support that, to provide that supporting role. So I'll go into each slide in a little bit more detail. So in front of you right now are the first two goals. The first one really has to do with supporting the city council on climate action plans. Obviously, as some of you know, the city recently updated their climate action plans with a lot of elements being shown with the goal of obviously trying to combat the climate change that we're facing right now. And out of that particular goal, there are two specific items being that was adopted as part of the commission work plan. One was to review the city's transportation master plan and recommend projects most likely to reduce vehicle miles travel. This is an ongoing, obviously, dialogue each year. The city has a capital improvement program, a 5-year capital improvement program, which really looking at infrastructures that supports the circulation of the city. And as a matter of fact, that particular element is what really allows the commission each year to look at the TMP and potentially suggest projects out of the TMP that can go into the capital improvement program as you layer each year for the next 5 years or so. So obviously everything I'm talking right now is going to be very high level, and happy to go into details a little bit later on too, if anyone's interested. The second item right here is advise City Council on the implementation of this TMP. So this really has relation to the first bullet, as that, as some of you that have flipped through the TMP, you might have noticed the TMP has a lot of different types of transportation projects, where we have bike lanes, we have sidewalks, transit projects. One of them is also to evaluate the NTMP. So as some of you might remember, this is actually an item that just came to the commission, I believe 2 or 3 months ago. So effectively, we can check off that box. So this is something that we have accomplished as a commission this year. The third bullet point is to advise the council on planning and the installation of Middle Avenue, the rail crossing, as well as the complete streets project that the commission actually provided feedback on last month, and will hear an item about that in the July meeting. We're currently aiming to come back to the commission in July with some real recommendations for the Middle Avenue Complete Streets project. So definitely something that we are continue to work on as a commission and staff as well. Number 4 is to support initiatives to improve the access to downtown and support downtown business. Obviously, as COVID continues to be the forefront of the story for many downtown businesses, this goal was initially identified as a way for the commission to be able to help the city council with downtown related decisions. So given that there aren't really that much activity going on in downtown, there hasn't been a lot of activities for the subcommittee to do as well. Number 5 is regarding the Safe Route to School program. And as some of you know, the city, we have a Safe Route to School program. It's currently, and it's a very active program that has task force meetings and educational materials and we do a significant amount of outreach to not just the public, but also act as a conduit to the school districts and individual schools as well. So one of the things that the city council has tasked us to do this year is actually to evaluate the program and see if there's anything that we would like to, improve upon on the program itself, or perhaps after the evaluation, the answer to that question is, the program is, really good shape. And there's nothing more to do. So kind of the extremes of both ends, obviously. So that is something that I believe the Safe Route to School subcommittee will be tasked on to do. And that would be one thing that at least that we can have a more in-depth dialogue if you so choose to desire. And lastly, for number 6, really just making sure that we continue to look at regional projects and making sure that Menlo Park, whatever regional projects that might impact Menlo Park, they will continue to provide that support to the city council, making recommendations. So I think in the last year or so, with former chair Levin, we kept a really close eye out on the Dumbarton Rail projects, which will continue to do so. There's the pilot program that for regional transit agencies, they're looking to have a, essentially kind of a pilot pass that would be allowed to use on all platforms rather than having a single pass for each platform. So obviously that has a direct impact to Menlo Park residents as well. So we'll continue to do so on a staff level and then bringing that to the commission whenever it's necessary. So this is my last slide, basically showcasing all the subcommittees we have currently and the members. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this item, tonight we're really taking this opportunity to just taking a step back and looking at some of the subcommittees that we have and taking a second look at them, given that we have new members and members that were no longer here that might play a bigger role in each of the subcommittees. Wanted to open that up for conversation. And of course, the conversation will be revolving on, one, are there any subcommittees that we want to maybe sunset? Two, or perhaps combine, or two, if there are member exchanges that would be desired by either the current member that trying to be on one of the subcommittees, or current members that are part of the subcommittee that wants to peel off. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and open it back up to the chair.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to let everyone know that this did not come out of the blue. This is a product of a conversation that Kevin and I have had a few times about the commission and making sure that everyone feels like their time is being used well and that the expectations are clear and that people are working on issues that are of meaning to them. And so I really appreciate the way Kevin just laid the groundwork, and that when I was thinking about subcommittees with him and talking about it, it feels that the best thing to do is make sure that we kind of revisit the priorities, refamiliarize ourselves with the priorities, and then make sure that the subcommittees and the work we're doing go back to that. So as Kevin said in the end of his presentation, is there an opportunity to sunset some, maybe we've already accomplished what the subcommittee was set out to do, et cetera, or combine some? I think now would be a good time. We won't go over the time of the meeting, but we can always continue the discussion next time. But I think that there is an opportunity here to maybe reduce and focus the subcommittee list to match the priorities and to eliminate any duplication. I have some thoughts on it, but I would like to ask any commissioners if they have thoughts around if there's any opportunity here to pare this down or make it more streamlined. Any thoughts off the bat? Or do you want me to? Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I see a few people. Thank you. Commissioner Coleman, I think, was first.
I just have a question about the climate action plan. Could you enlighten me on some of the background of it? I mean, what's the goal?
I think, Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee was initiated or formed because a couple of years ago, the city was in the process of updating the Climate Action Plan. So through that particular task, this subcommittee was formed. And initially, the purpose of the subcommittee was to really be able to allow the commission to have a subgroup of people that are passionate about this topic to work with the Environmental Quality Commission, because they were the one that spearheading along with staff on the update. And as a result of that, and at this moment in time, the Climate Action Plan a new one has been updated and adopted. So there hasn't been as much action, I would say, required. And as you can see, with some of the former commissioners that are no longer on here, that we actually don't have any members. So certainly with the Climate Action Plan, at least from staff's perspective, there are certainly actions that can be taken by the commission. But at this moment in time, I think some of the legworks are really being done by staff because there's already been a plan adopted. There are very clear goals by the city council on what exactly we want to do in terms of, reducing carbon, CO2, and greenhouse gas, etc. So I think from staff's perspective, there's probably not a need for it anymore, and certainly I would maybe open it back up to the commission, some other commissioners if they feel otherwise.
I'm so sorry. Thank you, Kevin. Commissioner Sebrian?
Mine would be mostly I can see, like, given that we're down to 7 commissioners now, permanently, and like I am totally open to combining some things. I'm not sure how we would do it, but if you're looking for feedback about eliminating and combining, I'm supportive.
Oh, great. Thank you. Commissioner Jensen?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as a follow-up to Kevin's description of the climate action plan, I think we had some previous discussion around combining zero emission with climate action plan, but that sounds like, yeah, it's more of a no-op, because I think it's a good idea to just probably get rid of the climate action plan one. But I'm fine combining things too. I think it's probably, to the extent that we can work together through some of these potential like issues we see in these spaces, the better, especially given the like potential lack of momentum that we've had over the last year. Like, I think there's been a lot of like, I mean, credit should be due to those who put in a lot of time to investigate the issues in their subcommittee. But personally, I haven't seen like a lot of progress on mine, partially due to my own fault, and partially I think due to like not having good direction to go with. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on this.
Well, I'll just chime in on that point. Originally when I was thinking about this, to be honest, I thought, can we rename these to focus areas? Because I think it's important that we distinguish, is there a reason, for a subcommittee to exist and focus on an issue right now at this point in time? Or is something like an issue that we all do anyway together, or we all, use that lens, the way we look at issues as we discuss things in commission meetings. And I also just want to add, this is something that we can talk about maybe next time a bit more, but I think that don't want people to feel that there's sort of between every meeting you're expected to do homework in your subcommittee, right? It's really if there is something that requires a little more attention, or if you have an interest in diving a little deeper into something, and we can talk about that next time. I think we're running low on time. But in terms of, it sounds like one thing on the table is potentially removing the climate action plan subcommittee. I think one question I had is if we had, I know when you were presenting, Kevin, you said that we checked the box on evaluating the process of the TMP. Does that mean that we can sunset the TMP implementation subcommittee? I might not be understanding it. I apologize if I'm not, but has that one served its primary purpose?
Yeah, and certainly I'll also defer to the 3 commissioners that are part of that subcommittee group. I think the short answer would be no. While we have accomplished the NTMP goal that was set forth by the city council, the TMP implementation subcommittee was originally conceived to be able to continue to provide that support to the city council. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have this great document, the TMP, and each year on the staff level, we try our best to accomplish as many as possible. But at the same time, there are still, more projects that can be selected and be introduced to the various programs that we have. So as I mentioned, the capital improvement program, right? The 5-year CIP, what we call a CIP. I think that particular program would really benefit from having the TMP implementation subcommittee on a yearly basis, just to take a look at that program and making sure that, okay, some of the projects that are, because each year we could potentially introduce more projects for them once projects are completed. there's more room for the future. So I would not recommend necessarily to sunset that one yet, although of course the commissioners that are part of that subcommittee can certainly tell me otherwise.
Commissioners Baruzzi or Sebrian, do you have a thought on that?
I'm personally running out of steam. I'm getting over COVID, and I'm totally not, like, I can probably think about this more coherently, but at another time. I'm sorry to say.
Okay, all right then. Well, let's see, if that's the case, maybe we should defer the discussion. I don't want people to leave feeling that they weren't able to express their voice. It's something that affects all of us in our work.
I'll make one comment, which is that I feel like subcommittees are like, it's funny how we're kind of channel all of our outside of meeting focus into this one pathway. And again, I'm not speaking very clearly, but I think, you know, and I know Chair Cole, you and I have talked about this a little bit. There are all kinds of other ways to engage outside of commission meetings with the community, with each other. I mean, we haven't talked about the idea of having Brown Act buddies. We haven't talked about the idea of sort of eyes and ears in the community, like the role we might be playing in sort of advertising city surveys and projects and things like that to our neighbors and other groups we have. So I know we're going to want to put some energy into thinking about the subcommittees, but I almost feel like the list of subcommittees is so daunting, and the commission for many of them is so vague.
I guess that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And I just feel like there are other very tangible things that we can and should be doing and checking in on. And so I'll just say that.
Well, that could very well be, but
that's my feedback.
I think what you also said though is that this is probably a good exercise because,
yeah,
you know, that's what I heard, but am I wrong about that? You did, it sounds like this list seems daunting to you or too long.
I just, you know, and I think I haven't always necessarily agreed with the idea that what we need is a lot of subcommittees that are sort of sitting and waiting. I think sometimes what we need is more nimble response teams based on issues that are coming before us.
Okay, so agreed. And I would think I was trying to mention that before, which is that I don't think these committees have been effective at sort of just being ongoing without a specific remit. So we'll work on that. I think the first step was to try to just narrow down to the issues, the focus areas. So
can I ask a question actually? Because one thing we've done in the past is sort of try to anchor subcommittees, although we haven't totally anchored them to goals. And I'm wondering when we're meant to do our goal setting. Council didn't do goal setting this year, right? So that's a little bit wonky. But to me, it feels a little weird to have a discussion about the subcommittees without knowing what council's goals are for us and what our support to council is supposed to be looking like.
Kevin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Commissioner Baruzzi is absolutely correct. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, typically we would have a city council goal setting meeting followed by a commission goal setting meeting to make sure that both align. In this case, this year, the city council have not had a different goal setting meeting, which essentially what that means is that the goals that were adopted and approved last year will continue to be so this year, right? So what I would recommend, it sounds like, you know, basically in the interest of time, and then also just making sure that people don't still have work day tomorrow. What I can perhaps offer is I'll offer myself to be available to talk to any of the subcommittee members that want to have a conversation with staff about sort of, you know, objectives, goals, priorities, etc., that those subcommittees would like to achieve. I think at this moment in time, the multimodal metrics is fairly clear. I think there have been meetings before with staff. So I think that subcommittee has a fairly clear goal. I think the Safe Route to School program subcommittee also has a very clear goal at this moment in time, which is to evaluate the program and make a set of recommendation to the city council. But beyond that, I think any of those other subcommittees, staff can offer, we can offer ourselves to talk to those members if they're interested. And maybe perhaps within that conversation, they can be that hopefully will take place before the next commission meeting, and we'll use the next commission meeting to
Okay,
have that more detailed conversation.
okay, so why don't I own that follow-up? I'm gonna work with you, Kevin, to do the outreach with the different commissioners and set up time to focus on what each of these subcommittees should be doing. I just want to acknowledge that Kevin did start this conversation with a presentation of our goals. The city council may not have updated their goals, and so maybe we're working on last year's goals, but the goal of this conversation was to revisit what the goals were, which we did, and then look at these subcommittees in the light of those goals to see if they're supporting the goals that we're working toward.
I totally appreciate that. And all I meant was that historically, every year we've updated our goals. And I guess I understand now that maybe we won't do that. So I didn't mean to imply that we weren't goal oriented or whatever. It's just there's been this historical trend that seems different this year.
Right. Yeah, and I probably should have pointed out during my presentation as well. So
Yeah, I mean, we could do something. I have an idea about maybe a way to make sure our goals are the right goals, but let's discuss this next time. In the meantime, just the last thing I would say before we wrap on this slide is because you started talking about it, Kevin, I thought you might say it. I think if it's a decision we could make before we close, it might be useful. Multimodal, am I misunderstanding, or could that possibly, in my opinion, be combined with zero emission or no?
So the short answer would probably be not necessarily. And the way I would see it is I see zero emission to be more of a, at this moment in time, perhaps more policy driven. So about what that, and I know Commissioner Jensen had an interest in perhaps looking at, scooter policies, et cetera. So while, it's currently not part of the city council work plan, it doesn't mean it can't be done on a kind of a, sub-commission level. The multimodal, I would say that just because it was originated to make sure that we continue to be aware of some of the regional transportation projects that are happening, which staff on a staff level will continue to monitor and bring that to the commission whenever there's a new development that we want to make sure that the commission has a chance to provide input on. So I would say out of the two, perhaps I would say we can even sunset multimodal, but keep zero emission for now, unless Commissioner Jensen wants to sunset that one as well. And multimodal, of course, I don't know if Commissioner Cyprian agrees.
Yeah,
with the fact
Commissioner Cyprian has got her hand up, so let's start with her.
I am totally fine sunsetting it. If I were to, I was kind of thinking, besides the fact that the TMP implementation has this other actual task, does it? You said it had an actual task, and now it's right out of my head, whatever that was, even though I'm on that committee. But I was thinking that multimodal could potentially fold into that, because one of the issues with TMP implementation that we talked about was like trying to put together kind of routes. And so multimodal to me fits into that. But frankly, like, we're all multimodal.
Yeah, I agree. I think
every
there's
time it comes up, we all have interest in it. So I'm fine just sunsetting it too, and knowing that we're all going to be all over it.
Commissioner Cyprian, I appreciate that point. I think it's really important, if some of these things are things we're all doing and expecting ourselves to do and bring to the table, then I don't think it necessarily needs to be a subcommittee. And I do agree with you that multimodal is one of those things. And also I agree with Kevin that staff will keep us updated, Kevin, as you said, around regional developments. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
All right, so can I, if this is something, is this a motion? Does this rise to a motion? Can I make a motion around the change of those two committees of the
Do you need to
sunsetting?
call for public comment on this?
Yep. Patrick, can you call for public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. At this time, it does not look like we have any public comment. If you'd like to make public comment, please just raise your hand. But I think we are good here.
Commissioner Seabrain, do you have something, or is that your hand raised from before? Okay, no, all right. All right, Commissioner Abruzzi, did you have anything else to add? No, okay. So I'm gonna make a motion to sunset the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee and the Multimodal Subcommittee.
Okay.
Does anyone second that?
I will second that, yeah.
Oh, JK.
Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second on the table to sunset climate action plan and multimodal subcommittees. If I can have if for those commissioners that would like to vote yes to it, please raise your hand. I am seeing unanimous votes. So great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone, for staying. I know it's been rather late. And very much appreciate the dedication, and as Commissioner Seabrain pointed out, just the thoughtfulness and ability to just ask great questions and go into a lot of detail tonight in a very important discussion. I really appreciate your time and your dedication to the city. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:57 p.m. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Everyone, good night.
Thanks, staff.